Sophia has been betrayed by her fiancé, Crown Prince Raymond, and her close friend Samantha, and now her entire family is dead. But when she opens her eyes, she discovers that she has returned to the past, before her engagement to Raymond. To save her family and avoid an engagement with the second prince, Sophia decides to make his older brother Alexis the crown prince and avenge them both. But this path is full of dangers. Tears just blurred her eyes, and she couldn't stop them. How stupid she was. And her parents said that you can't trust people like that. But these were the closest people, her fiancé and her friend, and she believed them. She did everything to make sure that everyone in this situation was comfortable. And until today, Sophia thought that the crown prince and her best friend were the two closest and most loyal people to her. Samantha watched as the girl was lying on the floor in blood and dying of pain. But she didn't care. She hated Sophia with all her heart because she had everything one could wish for, and it infuriated her. There was no compassion in Raymond's eyes either. On the contrary, he was glad that with Sophia's help, he had achieved the status of crown prince. But as long as her family was alive, he could not fully develop his campaign. Therefore, they would all die. She, like her parents, has already played the role the crown prince needed, and now they are being thrown away like old things, in simple words. Liquidated. And the girl can do nothing. They will simply kill her in cold blood, like the rest of the family. How Sophia wished she had another chance, and time could turn back. She would then find a way to change the situation so that she could protect her loved ones and take revenge on all the traitors. Suddenly, the girl woke up. If it weren't for the bright rays of light that were shining through the window, she would have been sleeping, and this nightmare would have continued for several more hours. But, thank God, it's all over. There was a knock at the door, and the maid appeared on the threshold. She apologized and said that it was time to tidy herself up. The young Mrs. Hare was very disheveled, and she looked, let's say, rather rumpled. Perhaps yes, she probably looks rumpled. And inside, she feels just as terrible. It's all because of a terrible nightmare. She urgently needs to get up and get herself back to normal. The girl asked the maid for a mirror, and when it was in her hands, she just froze, sitting in bed. Something strange happened. She began to look much younger and does not understand how it happened. The maid Ani also seemed to see that something was wrong with the young mistress, but she blamed it on the fact that she was not fully awake yet. But then Sophia suddenly asked what year it was. The maid replied that it was the 11th month of the year 549 of the Akli era. This meant that she had gone back 2 years. Now she was 17 again, and everything that had happened to her was just a nightmare. But she had never had such a realistic dream before. So she needed to check everything out. It was all very realistic, and it seemed that no one knew what would happen in 2 years, except Sophia. Annie decided that her mistress was just fooling around, so she said that she could do stupid things until the evening, but only until the evening, because then she had to get ready for the ball. And this was no joke. What? A ball? Exactly. She was at this event 2 years ago and remembers it very well. But she has absolutely no desire to appear there a second time. Although it is possible to change some things in her future, she knows it. The maid said she would prepare Sophia's outfit and help her get ready. She assured her that her mistress would look the best. And the girl breathed a sigh of relief. How good she was, her faithful Ani. It was Ani who stayed with her family when trouble came and all the servants ran away. This girl stayed with her until the end, until the crown prince and Samantha decided to deal with her and her family. She was even present the day those traitors broke into their home and started killing her loved ones. Maybe she was killed too. Maybe she managed to hide or run away. I wonder what happened to her now. For the sake of this faithful and good-natured maid, and for the sake of her family, she would put an end to all these outrages and restore justice. The girl did not doubt this for a second. So, we need to sort everything out. What information does she have? It is now clear that there are 2 whole years left before her death. That means there is still time, and she will be able to fully develop a plan for her revenge. But then it dawned on her that she was about to get engaged to that damn Raymond. She was so stupid and naive that she didn't even realize that this union was beneficial for him in order to become the crown prince. As she thought further, the girl suddenly remembered that her engagement to Raymond had been arranged by her father, and if she did not hurry now, she would not be able to prevent a terrible tragedy later. This traitor and murderer will be proclaimed crown prince and heir to the throne of the empire if she does not change the future now. So she must try very hard. After all, the lives of her family and the state depend on her. To become a crown prince in their country, one must have royal blood and the obligatory support of the nobility. Sophia Edelball's family was the second most influential after the royal family. The engagement with the second prince, Raymond Auckland, is a contract that benefits both parties. With the support of the Duke's family, Raymond will undoubtedly be able to become the crown prince and then gain the right of succession. In turn, the Edelball family, having made their beloved daughter the wife of the crown prince, only strengthened their position in high society. But the fact is that the vile Raymond immediately killed all of Sophia's relatives as soon as he became the crown prince. As long as the Edelball family exists, this swindler and murderer will never have real power. And this was the main reason for everything that happened, which she now urgently needs to change. If she becomes his bride this time, then, despite all the influence he has in society and at the imperial court, Raymond, no matter how he looks at it, will have to reckon with the famous Edelball family. Unable to accept this state of affairs, this scoundrel, having used Sophia's family to the fullest for his own purposes, decided to immediately get rid of her and all her relatives. And he succeeded then. This situation simply pissed her off. She got up from her chair and shouted to the whole house that she would never allow this to happen again. Now she would be the main one in this game called Cold Revenge, and she will spare no effort and take revenge on another person. After all, it was not only Raymond who betrayed her. Samantha, their mutual friend, turned out to be a lying creature, and behind her back was preparing a plan to kill Sophia. But where should she start? It's too hard and unsafe to act alone. But the thing is, no one will believe her if she says she's been in the future and knows exactly what will happen in 2 years. Of course, she remembered one man, the first prince and heir to the empire, Alexis Auckland. This guy is not like the others, especially that traitor Raymond. Alexis was the unfortunate hero of the novel. He is Raymond's older brother, the firstborn of His Majesty. But because his mother was an ordinary servant, the boy could not receive the same support as the second prince. Unlike Alexis's mother, Raymond's mother was born into a famous and influential duke's family. And thanks to her connections, the aristocracy sided with the second prince. As a result, the society close to the imperial palace always favored Raymond and his mother. And Alexis was sent away from the capital to the most distant castle, which belonged to the emperor. However, the young man studied a lot and worked on himself. He was madly interested in military service. Soon he became a famous, experienced military general and won the respect of the country's residents. The first prince managed to gain serious support from the common people. And then the emperor began to doubt the candidacy of the future prince. It was obvious that Alexis was much more suitable for the role of heir. The vile Raymond realized that the title could slip away from him in the near future and saw his brother as a real enemy. And a plan to eliminate the dangerous rival began to mature in his soul. It is clear that the second prince was supported by the entire aristocracy. But this was not enough, because Alexis had the common people behind him. In addition, the first prince was much stronger in the military arena. The proud Raymond could not stand this, so he tried to have the first prince sent to war. But after a few months, he managed to end it, of course, with the victory of the Kingdom of Oakland, but he paid for it with his life. He died in the decisive battle. This is what led to Alexis being called the unlucky hero. But this is exactly the man she needs. With him, she could go against Raymond and try to defeat him. But the trouble was that this valiant warrior was already dead. He went to war on the 16th day of the second month of the year 549, but today is the 13th, and that means he should still be alive. She didn't notice how evening had come. Her maids were already looking for their mistress to prepare her for the ball. She had to shine and be better than everyone else because her position in society demands it. The maids knew their business perfectly, and within an hour, Sophia was completely ready to go to the ball. Her sky blue dress was delightful, and everything else was no worse. Annie simply rolled her eyes. Her mistress was the most beautiful of all. She asked permission to stand in the corner of the ballroom and watch her mistress. And if she needed anything, the maid would help her immediately. Sophia knew she was about to find herself in the spotlight, but she was absolutely prepared for it. After all, she had already experienced something similar once, so she knew exactly how she would behave with certain people. As soon as the girl entered the hall, all eyes were immediately turned to her person. And this is understandable, because she was used to being under the sight of curious eyes all the time. Therefore, she was not even worried. She was looked at in exactly the same way before. After all, at that time, everyone in the royal castle expected Sophia to become the bride of the future crown prince. She behaved like a real lady and was held up as an example to other girls. But recently, the courtiers' glances have increasingly revealed only hatred. Now it makes a completely different impression. Even a little boring. That feeling is missing. Raymond appeared right in front of her. He gave her a fake smile and some trivial compliment about how beautiful she looked. She almost threw up from the perfect pretense. Of course, she had expected the crown prince to come to the ball, but she had not expected him to bump into her at the very beginning of the celebration. Before, his words and smile had brought her joy and pleasure. Now she knew exactly what his smile meant, and that it did not carry an ounce of truth. This friendliness, interest, and light flirting were just a mask. And since she was too naive, Raymond's plan worked perfectly. Raymond always maintained a friendly image to potential brides, but he did it solely to maintain his reputation. And it worked. But this time, she played completely differently. She also gave the young man a false smile and said that compared to him, she looked like a gray mouse or a pale moth. She made it clear to him that she wasn't going to melt at his words, like the previous times. But he wasn't a slouch either. He said that he needed to keep an eye on his bride, otherwise she would disappear or become a ghost. While other girls were dying of love for the prince, she openly hated him. And he is deeply mistaken if he thinks that he can behave with her as he pleases. This time, she will not allow it. If it became public knowledge that she and Raymond were engaged, it would look as if her house was supporting the second prince and his candidacy for the position of heir, so rejecting him now would be foolish. She should not arouse suspicion in society. After all, it was necessary to remember that if you underestimate someone, then later you will remain a fool. This is exactly what Sophia was in the past. Let him consider her a naive fool at this stage of their relationship. This mask suits her very well now. It will be easier for her to implement her plan for revenge. But for now, she just needs to smile. And then a clear female voice was heard. Sophia would not have confused it with anyone else, but not him. Samantha flew into the room like a whirlwind. She was their mutual friend with Raymond, a bright, eccentric, and always cheerful nature. This cruel traitor will have to smile now. How she hates her. But now is not the time to sort things out. You need to continue playing the role and be very vigilant so as not to slip up. She tried very hard not to hit the girl right in her pretty face and kept smiling. Then she asked why Samantha had just called Prince Raymond, and Samantha made a surprised face. She was a bad actress. Samantha began to wriggle out of it, saying that before Sophia arrived, Mr. Raymond had kindly agreed to keep her company. Earlier, when she had gone for a walk, she had felt so lonely. The second prince also began to defend his accomplice. He said that she actually looked very sad. This is the only reason Raymond decided to accompany Samantha. By making such speeches, the second prince hoped to embarrass Sophia because she was hinting at an inappropriate relationship between him and Samantha. He said the same thing shortly before her elimination. At that time, she truly believed that there was nothing between these two except friendship. How naive and trusting she was. Behind her back, these murderers were carrying out a terrible plan, in the end of which Sophia's entire family would die. Suddenly, all the guests turned their attention to the arrival of the first prince. Some began to whisper that the son of a maid should not attend such an event, but the young man did not pay attention to it. Yes, Alexis Auckland walked into the room, and he didn't care that everyone was talking about his appearance behind his back. He was calm and confident. That's exactly what Sophia needed. The game would start today. Samantha and Raymond were not left behind. The girl made a face and said that how could they let people in military uniforms into the ball? It was just weird and unpleasant. Decent people were having fun here. Sophia appreciated the impeccable appearance of the guy. She thought that, for a soldier, the dress suit is precisely the military uniform. This clothing corresponds to his status, and his outfit is simply magnificent. The girl needed to talk to Alexis face to face. They had a lot to talk about, but she needed to put these two traitors somewhere. She needed to avoid their attention, because things might not go according to her plan. But while Sophia was thinking, someone suddenly put a hand on her shoulder. It was Samantha. This snake saw that the girl was thinking, and her face was very serious, so she decided to ask if everything was okay. The girl forced a smile. She couldn't think about anything bad, otherwise she would give herself away. She had to control herself. She said she wasn't feeling well and wanted to be alone for a while. So the girl told these mean friends that she was going to the balcony to get some fresh air. It was a great excuse to be alone. She needed an excuse that wouldn't arouse suspicion. They pretended so well that she didn't even think or guess that she was being so skillfully deceived. They did it simply flawlessly, pretending to be her best friends. Why was she so stupid? She couldn't immediately recognize that there was something between these two people other than just friendship. Before Sophia died, Samantha made it clear that she was Raymond's lover. Then, while in the prison cell, she asked her mean friend why she was doing this to her. After all, her family had done nothing wrong. On the contrary, her parents had helped Raymond a lot. But Samantha just laughed. It was pathetic to see the society darling behind bars. She was right. Her family was innocent. But that was life. Her father's influence was simply used. This lying creature just laughed in her face, and there was not a drop of compassion in her eyes. She mocked the girl in her last moments of life and did not regret it one bit, just like damn Raymond. Looking into Sophia's eyes, Samantha said that their plan had worked. They had blackened the girl's family, forged important documents to discredit her father, and now Samantha would become the crown princess in her place. It was all that damn jealousy. That was what led to this end. Raymond was jealous of his brother because he was the best at everything. Samantha, as it turned out later, was jealous of Sophia and dreamed of being in her place. Sophia decided to ask how long she and Raymond had been hiding their secret relationship from her. She laughed again and told her that they had been dating for a long time. The relationship had started long before their engagement. This is how the most ordinary envy changes everything. It changed the friendship of two girls. And why did Sophia not notice anything before? Did not attach any importance to the fact that a plan to eliminate her was being prepared behind her back. But memories shouldn't get in the way now. The mind should be clear and cold to plan revenge. Since their connection began before the engagement, it means they should be in a relationship now. But they are so cunning and prudent that they behave like ordinary friends around her. They chat, joke a lot, but casually exchange glances, trying to hide it from prying eyes. How much rot in their hearts. They always saw her as a naive fool and nothing more. Although they are right, she really was like that before. But now a lot has changed, and in the future everything will be different. At this point, Alexis, who was still in the room, turned around abruptly and headed for the exit. He was fed up with all the looks, so he apologized and said he would look for another place. The girl saw that she was losing her chance to talk to the first prince, so she ran to fix the situation. She asked Alexis to wait a little longer and give her some time. We must take advantage of this chance. Sophia said that she had a very important conversation and dragged the prince to the balcony. While there was no one there, they would be able to talk calmly without witnesses. When Alexis looked at her, she began to doubt if this was the same person. She had only spoken to the first prince once, and that was in the distant past. Maybe she was wrong, and this was not him, but there was no turning back. Her facial features seemed to be the same as many years ago. The guy finally asked what she wanted to talk to him about. He didn't know this girl, or he just didn't remember. The girl apologized. It all happened quite spontaneously. Sophia introduced herself, said that she was the daughter of Duke Edelball, and that immediately changed the situation. Of course, the guy was familiar with this last name. There was no time to waste. Someone could come out onto the balcony at any moment. That's why the girl said it straight out, as it was. The prince shouldn't take part in the planned war. Otherwise, he wouldn't come back from there. It turned out that this guy had a completely different character from the rest of the imperial family. He was a real warrior, brave and straightforward. Of course, he did not believe her and asked where she got this information from. What could Sophia answer? He wouldn't believe that she had risen from the dead and returned to the past of 2 years ago. She simply said that it was a trap, specially designed to kill the prince. As expected, the guy demanded some proof. But Sophia didn't have any. He still didn't believe her, and she begged him to just take her word for it. She had no reason to lie to him, so that's all she has. The guy was slightly irritated and disappointed. Naturally, even if she told him what would happen in 2 years, he wouldn't believe it either. He was seeing her for the second time in his life. Sophia said that she understood him perfectly and understood why he doubted her words. Perhaps he believed that the girl wanted to deceive him, but he should be aware of her future engagement. The girl tried to explain that he should still believe her words. After all, they had one goal. She would help Alexis become the heir and receive the title of Crown Prince. The best option was to combine their forces. It was obvious that the young man was slightly confused. He understood that, as an opponent, Raymond was very strong and had the support of the nobility. Therefore, he really needed allies interested in his victory. So Alexis decided to listen to the girl, and she told him that she knew exactly what was going to happen in 2 years. He would go to war, his army would win, but the prince himself would die on the battlefield. And she is also 100% sure that Alexis is being set up. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent the heir to the throne to a cruel death. But the guy asked how she knew all this. She definitely shouldn't tell the guy where she got the information from. No one would believe her that she came from the past. So she said that she overheard Raymond's conversation by accident. Sophia remembers her last conversation with this traitor very well. He was so pleased that he was taking the life of the one who helped him become crown prince. He removed this obstacle from his path, just as he removed Alexis. On that fateful evening, when Raymond and Samantha decided to kill her, they did not hide the truth. She and the first prince were indeed an obstacle to Raymond's rise to power. They always irritated and powerless with their behavior. This damn son of a dirty servant was always ahead of Raymond, and this infuriated the traitor more than anything. What if the emperor decided that Alexis was a better candidate for the role of crown prince? He could not allow this. He did everything to remove a strong rival from his path. After all, he was the one who was supposed to be appointed crown prince. Everything could have been done much more quietly, but this blockhead wanted to fight. This scoundrel had his connections everywhere, even in the war. That's why he tried to organize everything so that his brother simply wouldn't return from the war. He was killed on his beloved military field. Sophia recalled scenes from the past and could not believe her memory. Was Raymond really that dangerous and cruel? Why hadn't she seen it before? Why hadn't she figured out which of the brothers was worthy of the throne? After all, this man was more terrible than the devil himself. Only in the last moments of her life, before the second prince was to kill her, did she realize that she had made a very big mistake. And this mistake cost not only her life, but also her entire family. And now the main task of the girl is to convince the prince of her words and manage to prevent a terrible disaster. Now it is known how Raymond killed Alexis, so his words are not a lie. The girl told the first prince that Raymond was going to arrange his death on the battlefield in the coming war. The people he trusted would betray him at the most crucial moment, so he had to be very vigilant and attentive to prevent his death. It seemed that Alexis was not ready to hear such information. He is an experienced professional soldier and understands people. He trusts his subordinates, so he does not understand which of them could be a traitor. Sophia begged the first prince to listen to her words. She knew they sounded too strange, but no matter how you look at it, it was true. He should be wary of one person who is a traitor and works for Raymond. Alexis thought it was stupid to ask such a question, but he still asked one question. Who in his team is the traitor? In response, he heard only two words. "It is Barry Jen." This man was his right hand. The first prince's eyes flashed with rage. He was simply at a loss as to how a man with whom he had fought so many wars, to whom he had trusted absolutely everything, could turn out to be a traitor. This was complete nonsense. Sophia continued to convince Alexis of the truth of her words. It turns out that Raymond is holding Barry's younger sister hostage. Therefore, the man's hands are tied, and he carries out all the orders of the crown prince to save the girl. Of course, this information changes the whole thing. Lexus knew how much his friend loved his sister. He replaced her mother and father, who died long ago. Therefore, it is impossible to even blame the guy for betrayal. Alexis seemed to understand the seriousness of the situation. He said that he would definitely save Barry's sister. He just needed to know where she was now. But everything had to be done carefully, discreetly, and without committing any evil deeds. Sophia fully supported his idea and said that she would help him with absolutely everything she could. And she also knows that the girl is locked in a warehouse in the eastern part of the royal castle. Alexis was silent for a minute, and then said that in order for them to trust each other, he wanted the girl to do something. Well, what should she do? Why didn't he trust her anyway? If the guy saves his friend's sister, then he will understand that Sophia was telling the pure truth, and then she will be able to gain his complete trust, and this is already the first step on the path to revenge. The prince took a long time to gather his thoughts and did not know how to voice his request. After a short pause, he said that he would like the girl to go with him to look for Barry's sister. In principle, it was quite logical. After all, if the girl refused, the prince might think that it was a trap or some kind of deception. And if Sophia went with him, it would mean that he completely trusted her. Alexis was far from simple. He was not used to trusting the first person he met, especially beautiful girls. So he said that if a girl was serious, she would definitely prove it with her actions. Sophia understood perfectly well that in her situation there was nothing to lose. Alexis was a strong and reliable partner, and losing such an opportunity would be a stupid decision. Therefore, it was worth agreeing and going in search of a girl. On the other hand, Sophia understood that if she went to save Barry's sister Gina now, she would put herself in danger. But in doing so, she would prove that she had not lied and would easily gain the trust of the first prince. In this way, she would kill two birds with one stone. In order to avoid an engagement with Raymond, and at the same time make Alexis crown prince faster, she would have to win his trust first, no matter what. So she suggested they set out to search right away. Since the man was a professional soldier, he immediately assumed that the warehouse would probably be guarded by Raymond's subordinates. Going against them with bare hands was very stupid. First, you need to develop a plan and prepare. Sophia noticed that they had no weapons, and it was difficult to get them now. But Alexis showed her his sword. He even brought it to the ball. He didn't need any more weapons. The girl breathed a sigh of relief. You can go into battle and on reconnaissance with this man. Traitor Raymond is very arrogant, since he allowed the war hero to keep the sword. The young men set out immediately. They left the palace unnoticed and called a carriage. None of them cared that it was the middle of the night outside. The road was long, and an uncomfortable silence began in the carriage. Sophia simply watched the young man and could not understand whether he was relaxed or very concentrated. In any case, he was very handsome. Raymond was also attractive, but Alexis's beauty was completely different. This young man was charismatic, and his features expressed nobility and calm. Raymond was also a liar, and his smile was never genuine. Alexis rarely smiled at all. And because he was a military man, you wanted to rely on him and trust him completely. We reached the far warehouse already in the morning. As Alexis said, the entrance to the premises was guarded. If a patrol noticed them, I would be able to save the girl. So Alexis took Sophia's hand and pulled her deeper into the garden. He was sure there was another way in. Secret rooms always had two entrances. Now they had to find the second one. The young men walked around the room from the other side. Indeed, there was another door, and a guard was standing near it. Barry's sister was definitely here. Otherwise, why would 3 guards guard an abandoned room? Now their main task is to get inside unnoticed and make sure that the girl is being held here. A clear plan of action is needed so that everything goes flawlessly. But the young prince had a completely different opinion. He decided not to make any plans or strategies, but to just go straight ahead. This principle always worked and gave the desired result. The guards didn't suspect anything, and it was unlikely that anyone would walk around in such a forgotten place, especially at night. So the guards were completely calm and relaxed when they were attacked. Not even 5 minutes had passed before the guards were already lying on the ground and could not get up. Sophia noticed that the prince had more than enough strength. It really wasn't scary to go into the most dangerous battle with him. That's why the army led by the first Prince Alexis always won any battle. And now it's clear why he is so loved by ordinary people of the country. He is a real hero. When the young men were sure that there were no more of Raymond's men nearby, they went to the door that led inside the room. The guy easily dealt with the huge lock and pushed the door open. In the farthest corner, they saw a silhouette. As they got closer, it became clear that it was a young girl. She looked completely exhausted, and her mouth was covered with some kind of cloth. Without wasting a second, Sophia ran up to the poor girl and asked if Barry Jen was her brother. She nodded, and the girl quickly began to untie the ropes on her hands to free her. The girl was crying and said she was Amy, Barry's sister. Some people had kidnapped her, brought her here, tied her up, and gagged her. She had been here for several days and was begging these young men to save her. Sophia began to unravel the ropes faster. They probably had very little time. They needed to run away from here as quickly as possible to remain unnoticed. After all, the sun would soon rise. The young people arrived at the palace only in the morning. The military wing was still awake. Barry met them and froze on the threshold, seeing his commander, and next to him, two girls, one of whom was his missing sister. The boy could not see anything else because his eyes were blurred with tears. He rushed forward and hugged the girl tightly. She was crying too. She had been through so much. But now they were together again. Barry fell to his knees. He was still crying, but now out of gratitude and shame for trying to betray his boss. He could not be forgiven, but if it had not been his own sister, this would not have happened. Alexis asked his friend to stop crying. They would talk later, and their conversation would be very long and difficult. But now he really needed to finish with Sophia. She had information, and she was right. When the young men had stepped aside, the first prince bowed to the girl and thanked her. Today he was unharmed, and it was entirely due to her. So they had to continue. This meant only one thing. The guy began to believe what Sophia was telling him. So she reminded him once again that she was absolutely serious when she said she wanted to make Alexis the crown prince. The girl said that she acts on the principle, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend." Therefore, in order to become the crown prince, the guy needs to listen to her carefully. He must marry her immediately. To make her plan come true, the young people need to get married. This will not cause condemnation in society, since they are both from influential families. And then her father will make sure that Alexis becomes the heir to the throne. Of course, the prince liked Sophia from the very first sight. But how to understand all this? Just a minute ago, he was sure that he would not marry at all and would dedicate his whole life to military service. The girl tried to convince the young man. Marriage with her is a sure way to become the crown prince. The Edelball family is the Duke's. It is the oldest and one of the most influential in the empire. Her father is a well-known person in the country, and one word from him will be enough for the emperor to change his decision and appoint Alexis as crown prince, because he is worthy of it. Raymond knew that his brother, even dead, could cause him trouble, so he decided to marry Duke Edelball's daughter. That would certainly silence Alexis's supporters. At that time, Sophia did not understand at all that her relationship with Raymond was not about love. There was no such feeling there at all. It was a cold calculation on the part of the second prince. By marrying the daughter of an influential duke, he acquired the title he had long coveted and, by deception, inherited the honorable right to ascend the imperial throne as crown prince. With his final touch, Raymond slandered the noble Edelball family. The ducal family was no longer useful to him, so he ordered the execution of all its members, including his new wife. Alexis thought for a moment. Well, let's say the girl manages to make him crown prince. What benefit does she get from that, and why does she need it? As far as he knows, Sophia is soon going to be engaged to Raymond. But it was clear that the young Duchess was more than determined. She said that she would never allow Raymond to become crown prince. She did not want to see him as heir to the throne. Yes, she must get engaged to the second prince. But this has not happened yet, and there is still time to change everything. After all, after the engagement, it will be extremely difficult to dissolve the future marriage. Still, Alexis couldn't understand why his brother's fiancée was pulling off such a plan behind his back. And why was she helping him? What was the benefit? Raymond seemed to be quite nice to her. Yes, he showed kindness, even pretended to be in love. But all this was only for the sake of obtaining the status of crown prince. He had to smile constantly and swear eternal loyalty. Sophia never felt love for him. Maybe a slight sympathy, because when they met, the prince was polite and very nice. It seemed to her that they could live a good life together. But as it turned out later, Raymond had betrayed her long before announcing their engagement. He got along well with Sophia in public, and then ran to his mistress Samantha. He is so cruel that he didn't even blink when he killed her entire family. Sophia knows what Raymond is really like. His kindness was just a mask. But one day, his inner demon will break out. That's how things really are. This traitor will show his fangs yet, and she doesn't want to be used a second time. Besides, Raymond doesn't have the right qualities to be an heir. The first prince understood perfectly well that his brother was not at all suitable for the role of heir. But did Sophia really see in him, in Alexis, all those character traits that a crown prince should have? The girl replied that she was sure that he would be an excellent ruler in the future. The people would follow him because they trusted him. When he died in the war, the people of the country mourned for a long time. Sophia had no doubt that Alexis had already earned enough authority in society with his activities. Therefore, the majority of the empire's population would support him, and she would contribute to this. But Alexis said that no matter how you look at it, an engagement with Raymond would be more beneficial to Sophia's family. Her parents would never agree to let her marry a military man, so they had to play it safe. The first principal said that as a reward for winning a difficult war, he would ask the emperor for the right to betroth himself to Sophia. If he won, his request would be valid. And really, it should probably work. In a situation like this, even the emperor wouldn't be able to refuse Alexis. How clever he is, this first prince. The girl's mood even improved. Now she won't be the only one fighting against Raymond. It turns out that her ally is very resourceful, smart, and most importantly, brave. Since it was already quite late, the first principal ordered the carriage to be brought. Probably, Sophia's relatives were very worried about her. The young people agreed to discuss it at their next meeting. But Alexis had one last question. He asked the girl why she was so sure that the first prince wanted to become the heir to the empire. She didn't know him at all and had only seen him once, and that was in childhood. Sophia answered immediately. She was sure that for Alexis, who had always been in the shadows, such an unexpected decision to go to war meant that he had not given up on the hope of becoming the crown prince. The guy looked the girl straight in the eyes again. It turns out that girls from rich and influential families can be very smart and insightful. He had never heard such words in his entire past life. Well, the girl objected. She said that all her life she had been going with the flow. She had never doubted the decisions of her influential father or the way she lived. It seemed to her that everything was going as it should. She trusted the opinions of those around her and never asked unnecessary questions. That is why Raymond managed to deceive her so easily. To be honest, she herself did not really understand how she became the bride of this deceiver. But that was her past life. Perhaps the higher powers are giving her another chance to change everything, and she will definitely do it, with or without Alexis's help. Arriving home, Sophia decided to sit in the living room for a while. She needed to think and sort out the thoughts in her head. But suddenly, the girl heard footsteps. Her father, Duke Edelball, entered the room. The Duke asked the butler to leave her alone with her daughter. They needed to talk for a while without witnesses. The man nodded, apologized, and quietly left the room. The father asked the girl to follow her, and she obediently obeyed. In order for her and Alexis to act according to the plan, her father needed to be on their side. Otherwise, if they failed, everything would be over. It seemed that the Duke was not in the best mood. He asked why his daughter left the ball without permission. He asks the girl to explain why she did this. Not only her relatives were worried about her, but even the servants. Now, Sophia would have to wriggle out of it and come up with a plausible explanation. She bowed her head and asked for forgiveness. Thank God the Duke loved his daughter very much, so one could count on him not being angry for long. The Duke still frowned, reminded his daughter that she was engaged to His Highness Raymond. And by the way, the prince was also worried and looked for her for a long time. Well, Sophia was sure that her fiancé didn't care at all. After she disappeared, he immediately contacted her father. Nothing would escape his eyes, now or never. The girl decided to act. She told her father that she was grateful for everything he did for her, but she had one very big request that only her beloved daddy could fulfill. The Duke immediately sensed something was wrong. His daughter was acting strangely. Sophia rarely asked him for anything, so the conversation would probably be very serious. He asked what the girl wanted. Sophia said that the conversation concerns her recent engagement to His Highness Prince Raymond. She asks her father to help her end this union. She has no one else to turn to, only he can help. The Duke thought he had misheard something, or his daughter had simply gone mad. How could she even say such a thing? After all, everything had already been decided. She would become Raymond's wife. But the girl was not going to back down. She said that she categorically refused to marry His Highness the Second Prince. She believed that he was not a suitable candidate for the role of Crown Prince. Raymond is not a suitable candidate to be the heir to the empire. She is convinced of this and considers the prince a hypocritical deceiver. She does not think it will be possible to find someone who will accept this status, but it certainly should not be Raymond. Behind the mask of good nature, there is a completely different personality. The words of the second prince should not be trusted, nor should his actions. And her father, as an experienced politician, should see and understand this. In a way, Duke Edelball agreed with his daughter. He suspected that the prince had his own secret intentions, and his daughter was a bargaining chip. But who would then be suitable to be the heir to the empire? Sophia paused dramatically, then replied that she thought the first prince, Alexis, was ideal for the role. And he had already proven his loyalty to the people by fighting in numerous wars. It seemed that the father did not expect to hear this name from his daughter's lips. Why this person? He has many enemies throughout the country, and even in the imperial palace. His authority is a hindrance to many. Besides, this guy doesn't have a decent position in high society because his mother is an ordinary servant. Although these are all formalities. Sophia decided to remind her father that Alexis was fighting for his country and doing it very well. Besides, the guy was respected by the emperor and the common people. So why is such a brave and responsible commander like Alexis unworthy of being crown prince? He is an excellent candidate, and the Duke understands this perfectly well. He just doesn't want to admit it. Edelball thought about it. It turned out that his daughter was very perceptive and smart. But on the other hand, an engagement with an aristocrat would bring their family great benefits. And he doesn't know yet what to do in this situation. Sophia quickly understood her father's line of thought, so she continued to say that if His Highness Alexis became crown prince, their family would benefit no less. The father nodded, but countered that Raymond also had very good support. He also had supporters, and they were much more influential than the ordinary people of the country who supported Alexis. Sophia objected. It is true that His Highness has no allies among the aristocracy. However, their family can help him and stand by his side. For the Edelball family, this will be a priceless treasure. The man understood that the first Prince Alexis valued humanity and justice. He was truly trustworthy, and there was no arguing with his daughter on that. Besides, Raymond had tried to kill his brother, and Sophia also said that a couple of hours ago, she got offended with His Highness Alexis. The younger sister of his subordinate was taken hostage by Raymond. He wanted to set this subordinate against his brother, and if her father doesn't believe her, Then she will bring witnesses, Alexis Barry's deputy, his sister, and also the first prince himself. Sophia decided to tell the truth, that she ran away from the ball in order to meet Alexis and go with His Highness to save the poor girl. Otherwise, she could have died there. The Duke seemed shocked by this situation. He asked if Sophia was hurt, because you can't just put yourself in danger. She is a famous person, the Crown Prince's fiancée. Sophia asked for forgiveness once again, but she managed to prove that Prince Raymond is a man who can even kill his own brother to achieve his goals. Duke Edelball was a very wise man. Therefore, he understood that if the family entered into an alliance with such a person, the same sad fate could befall them. Therefore, it is worth thinking carefully. Sophia really hoped that her father would be wise enough to make the right decision. No matter how you look at it, Alexis really is much more suitable for the role of Crown Prince. The Duke didn't think long. After some thought, he agreed. However, what to do with the engagement? Everything needs to be thought through carefully, but he will take care of that a little later. It is already very late, and he needs to go to bed. The girl went out into the corridor. A satisfied smile shone on her face. She knew that her father would not let her down, because he was personally interested in his daughter's happiness. If she had not managed to convince him, all plans would have come to an end. Even if Alexis had petitioned the emperor, presenting him with his achievements in service, without receiving the Duke's consent, he would hardly have been able to obtain approval for the engagement. Of course, the Duke would have reluctantly allowed her to marry Raymond. But being brought up among aristocrats, he always attaches great importance to the interests of the family. Although the father is a very strict person, he always thinks about how it will be better for him and the family. Therefore, now he makes very important but difficult decisions for himself. This time, he must find it hard to forgive his daughter for refusing to marry Raymond. But as it turns out, he respects Sophia and her opinion. Apparently, the Duke, having thought everything through well and in detail, would want to conclude the engagement. And after Alexis returned from the war, he and Sophia would get engaged. This plan suited everyone. The next morning, Ani knocked on her mistress's door and said that she had received a letter. Strangely, the girl had not expected any letter and had no idea who had sent it. Raymond must have already learned that Barry's sister, Amy, had been rescued. Before the fighting began, Alexis decided to arrive early on the battlefield. But there, his assistant and loyal friend was already waiting for him. Bear once again thanked the prince with all his heart for saving his sister. He did not expect such an act from his boss. The man was very ashamed of his actions. After all, they were more than friends, and Barry had betrayed his boss. But he couldn't do otherwise. His sister's life was at stake. Alexis calmed the guy down, said that he was not going to punish him for such an act. He understands that Barry was forced to do so. Besides, he is a good soldier, and his experience will be useful on the battlefield. Barry fell to one knee and swore on his life that from that moment on, he would serve Alexis faithfully and never disgrace his status as the commander's right hand. Alexis was the one who sent Sophia the letter. He said that he was leaving for the battlefield in the morning, but he had not forgotten their conversation yesterday, and everything they had agreed on remained in force. It was very kind of the man. May luck be on his side, because he is doing what he must do. Sophia also has unfinished business. She called her maid again and said that she had a big request for the girl. She would be the one to help her in this matter. Anya was ready to fulfill any order of her mistress. Sophia leaned into the maid's ear and told her that she and His Highness Prince Alexis had become engaged. The maid was to tell this to the people Sophia would name. The girl should tell this information as if it were a secret and ask not to tell it to anyone. This information has not been made public yet. The maid just overheard it. Sophia was confident in the maid. This girl had never let her down before, so this time she would do everything as the mistress needed. So for now, everything was going according to plan. And Sophia's plan was to find a spy who worked for Raymond. And the second prince, being engaged to her, knew suspiciously much about the ducal family of Edelball. This is only possible if someone from the Duke's household is passing on the necessary information to Prince Raymond. So she needs to find out who that person is. Already by evening, Anya ran into Sophia's room and told her that His Majesty Prince Raymond had arrived. Everything happened much earlier than the girl had imagined. Raymond settled down in the living room and waited for his new bride. It was obvious that the man was very nervous. All his plans seem to be are starting to break down, and we need to figure out how Sophia is involved in this. The young duchess came out to the prince in all her glory. She greeted the man, put on a duty smile, and said that she was very glad to see Raymond in her home. The prince could win the hypocrisy competition. He smiled broadly, asking the girl not to act so formally, because they are very close and are old friends. The girl decided not to put on a show, so she immediately asked why the prince had come to the duke's house. He replied that he had heard some unpleasant rumors. It turned out that Raymond had overheard about Sophia's engagement to his brother Alexis. The girl nodded and realized that the maid had fulfilled her request perfectly. The information spread. Even in the mansion, no one found out anything for 2 days, so the information easily leaked out. In other words, among the few people Annie communicated with, there is a spy. Sophia's face was completely emotionless, so it was difficult for the prince to discern what she was thinking. But the girl asked him if he had heard any more news. Raymond said that there was no more important news. But by the way, he also heard that Prince Alexis saved her from an attack by hooligans. But this is probably just rumors. Sophia smiled slightly. So Raymond's men, who kept Barry's sister in the warehouse, were, in his opinion, just hooligans. He was trying to get out of this story unscathed, Sophia asked with a grin. Well, this worries Raymond, because they are soon to be engaged. Rumors should not spoil their perfect relationship, and especially the prince's reputation. The man perked up, which meant everything was going according to his plan, and he would soon be appointed Crown Prince of the Empire. So he suggested not to delay and get engaged right now. Well, the girl objected. It's a very hard time now. The war has started. Getting engaged at such an hour is not the best idea. It would be better to get engaged after the war is over. The prince had nothing more to do in the duke's house. He politely said goodbye to his bride and went to the carriage. Sophia thus gained some time for herself. The young duchess only now understood that Raymond was very easy to deceive. He was stupid and naive, and not even worth a second to Alexis. She was very sorry that her father was absent during the conversation with Raymond. After all, she was so close to revealing the truth. Well, let the deceiver enjoy his happiness while he can. Thanks to Raymond, the girl was finally able to uncover the spy. According to the request, Annie had to pass on messages to certain people. But each of these people received different information. Annie told the headmaid that at the party, the first Prince Alexis very openly courted Madame Sophia. And it seemed that her mistress was not at all against flirting with a man. Chef Jeff learned that Prince Alexis had suggested that Sophia meet in an informal setting. After all, they see each other so rarely, so it would be nice and pleasant to chat in private. But the palace to whom Annie told that the brave Prince Alexis saved her mistress from the hooligans who attacked her in the garden in the evening during the ball. And now everything fell into place. Butler Lauren was a spy. He knows the Duke's house well and can easily be used to lure the Edelball family into a trap. It was because of this man that Sophia's entire family was killed. Before her death, the Edelball family was accused of committing a crime, and in the house they found refutable evidence in the form of documents that had not existed before. So, all this is the work of the butler Laurent. He is a vile traitor, and Sophia will never forgive him for this. She will definitely take revenge on this villain, and the revenge will be very cruel. But despite knowing the truth, more evidence is needed to accuse Laurent of espionage. And to get it, the girl went straight to her father's office. The girl asked the Duke to call a handwriting expert, which puzzled the man. Why did his daughter need such a specialist, and whose handwriting did she want to study? There were many papers in the Duke's desk, and the expert will have to find out whether they were all signed by Mr. Edelball's hand, or whether someone else did it. When the expert arrived at the office, the girl gave him a bunch of documents and asked him to look at them. She also asked that Lauren be present in the office during the inspection. One of the documents contained information that Duke Edelball had organized uprisings in the territories of neighboring states. The man was shocked. Not only had he not signed such a thing, he had not even seen these papers. These documents testified to terrible crimes. Someone had broken into the Duke's office and wanted to pass himself off as Sophia's father, and had also planted these letters. And now the girl, with the help of an expert, offered to find out whose handiwork this was. After all, she was absolutely sure of her father's innocence. She said she had an idea who exactly forged her father's signatures. But all of this needed to be officially proven, which is exactly what she was going to do now. The handwriting in all the documents was very similar. By the way, it was almost like Lauren's. And a few minutes later, the expert confirmed the girl's assumption. Lauren was the one who signed the papers. The expert asked Laurent to write a few lines and compared his handwriting with the handwriting on the documents. There were almost no differences. These papers were written by the butler. He is the spy. Lauren fell to his knees and began to cry. He begged for forgiveness and said that he was simply infatuated with money. He couldn't refuse. The temptation was too great. It seemed that Sophia was no longer surprised by the butler's words. She asked if Raymond had offered him money to forge these documents. She no longer doubted the answer. As expected, the butler said that the first prince Raymond had, by hook or by crook, persuaded the man to forge documents and put the Duke's signature on them. The Duke seemed furious. He said he would send the butler to prison until he died. But that would not be enough for what this traitor had done. Neither the money that Laurent received from Raymond for the work done, nor Raymond himself helped this stupid and greedy man to obtain the Duke's forgiveness. He was sent to prison. After what happened, the Duke wanted to be alone for a while and sort everything out in his head. What if he hadn't found out about the butler's betrayal? What would have happened if the documents had been made public? If people had known the contents of the documents, there would have been a rebellion, and the Edelball family would have been executed. That is exactly what happened in the girl's past life. Her family was killed. Finally, Sophia helped her father open his eyes and see the real situation. After all, he trusted Raymond, but it turned out that he was simply using the Duke's power and reputation for his own purposes. Sophia left the secret papers. She thought that a handwriting expert might be able to decipher them in case they were needed to corner Raymond. The man was proud of his daughter. Now he sees how wrong he was about the second prince. And now it will be easier to fight him, because his daughter and Alexis will help him. He is not alone anymore. Even though she was in a soft bed, the girl couldn't fall asleep. Heavy thoughts wouldn't leave her head. What if she hadn't guessed that Lauren was a spy? What would have happened then? The girl's morning did not start with coffee. She heard strange noise and screams in the living room and decided to immediately find out what was going on downstairs. What could be happening so early? Poor maid Anya was standing on the threshold. She was trying to close the door and not let someone into their house, but Sophia could not yet see who this unwanted guest was. The girl called out to the maid and asked what was going on. And then, finally, she saw who was standing at the threshold. It was Samantha, and she was furious. Her face was distorted with anger. From the very threshold, seeing Sophia, Samantha started screaming, "What the hell is going on here? And why is this stupid maid not letting her into the house? Has she lost her fear and doesn't know who she is? It's probably too early to tell this bitch that Sophia already knows she's a traitor. And they won't be friends like they used to be. And there was no friendship before. This is all a farce and a benefit on Samantha's part." So Sophia decided to put on a smile and pretend that everything was fine. He could get the necessary information from Samantha. She said that everything was fine. The maid just had orders from her father. The girl explained that the engagement was coming soon, and that the house was in full swing preparing for the celebration. That's why the Duke didn't want strangers wandering around the mansion, that's all. Samantha stood there, unsure of what to say. Aha, so the engagement was going to happen after all. That was good. That meant Raymond's plan was working, and he would soon be crown prince. She had to continue playing the friend. Then Sophia apologized to Samantha, but said that she had absolutely no time to talk to her friend. She was busy preparing for the engagement, waiting for her tailor and hairdresser. The young duchess was always taught to be honest and not to lie. But this cannot be called a lie, because the engagement will still take place. However, her chosen one will not be Raymond, but Prince Alexis. Samantha hadn't expected this turn of events. She was used to Sophia being a sweet and well-behaved girl who always followed her and Raymond's lead. But what had happened now? The guest began to complain out loud. How could this be? Wouldn't her best friend find a minute to have a cup of tea with her and tell her the latest news from her life? Sophia apologized again and said that she was really busy some other time. She understood that Raymond had sent her to the Duke's house. This fox would be able to assess the situation and find out the necessary information. The next moment, the girl asked the servant to take the guest out of the living room. She simply could not talk to this traitor anymore. She was tired of pretending. It was no wonder that Samantha was shocked and did not say another word. The young Duchess's behavior was strikingly different from what it had been in the past. Previously, she had been easy to manipulate. Samantha had always managed to manipulate her friend before. And no matter how busy Ta was, she always found time to tell her about her relationship with Raymond and the circumstances of the Duke's house. Today, however, Sophia has behaved in a completely different manner, which has left Samantha in a state of stupor. She is probably wondering if the young Duchess has revealed her and Raymond's plans and secret relationship. Now Sophia was more than serious. She was no longer the little girl who trusted everyone. This time she would make them afraid of their shadows, and they would remember for a long time who Duchess Edelball was. Having driven Samantha away, the girl decided to really get down to business and prepare for the engagement. As soon as Alexis returns from the war, they will get engaged. Therefore, she needs to hurry and prepare everything necessary for the holiday, and not only. The girl called her maid and asked her to find her a self-defense teacher. She hadn't seen the need for it before, but it was time to be prepared for anything. Of course, the mistress's request surprised the young maid. Who is Mistress Sophia afraid of? She is a real angel. Why does she need a self-defense teacher? Who is she going to defend herself from? This decision did not come to the young Duchess suddenly. When she and Alexis went to rescue the girl Amy from captivity, she turned out to be completely useless. She did not know how to attack or defend herself. All was quiet in the imperial palace. Raymond paced nervously in his office, waiting impatiently for Samantha to return. She would bring fresh news from Count Edelball's estate. It didn't take long to give. But when Samantha told how her best friend met her, Raymond was really furious. How could this silly girl behave like that? I hadn't noticed her behaving like that before. Samantha angrily reported that she herself had no idea what had come over Sophia. The girl referred to preparations for the engagement and threw her friend out the door. But what kind of nonsense is this? He has known the Duchess for many years. She could not have done this to her friend Samantha. Sophia practically idolized this girl, so why did she send her away this time without a twinge of conscience? Raymond didn't understand at what point everything started to get out of control. Something was wrong here. Why was Sophia so nice to him, but rudely threw her friend out of the house? There were suspicions that she had exposed them. On the other hand, it's too early to draw such conclusions. Maybe Sophia's really busy preparing for the engagement. But if they show up at her place again, suspicions will definitely be unavoidable. We need to call Laurent and ask him everything. Every day at midnight, Lauren contacted Raymond. But suddenly, he stopped sending messages. The prince also did not receive a response to his messages to the butler. So something definitely happened. Samantha suggested they take a lesser interest in Lauren. Until they were absolutely sure their plan hadn't been exposed, they needed to be more careful. Lauren could take care of himself. The prince was also incredibly pissed off by the fact that someone had saved Barry's sister. And as luck would have it, Alexis found out about it. But I wonder where from. This thought haunted Raymond, and he was simply furious. He spent so much effort and money to make sure Alexis didn't find out anything about Barry's sister. And Barry himself wasn't supposed to tell anyone that his sister had been kidnapped. But even here, things didn't go according to plan. For the first time, even Samantha didn't know how to calm the prince down. He was in real despair, and it was very bad. They had gotten a little carried away, and now we need to quickly try to fix the situation. The girl smiled and said that Raymond needed to take a break. Besides, there was no point in worrying about the past, which could not be changed. They needed to think about the future. They had to make a new plan, more clear and effective. A few days later, the maid Anya brought a young man to the Duke's house and introduced him to Sophia as a self-defense teacher. This girl carried out all of her mistress's tasks with lightning speed. Imagine Sophia's surprise when she saw in front of her not a huge knight, but a fragile girl. And this girl was Barry's sister, the young warrior Amy. She will be the Duchess's teacher. And she was also surprised when she realized that her mistress was already acquainted with her teacher. Well, she honestly wanted to do the best and chose a nimble girl as a teacher for Sophia. If the poor maid had known under what circumstances her mistress had to meet Amy's teacher, she would have definitely fainted from surprise. But she herself would not have thought that this fragile girl was a teacher. The maid did everything in the best possible way. In order to find a self-defense teacher for the mistress, she turned to the Order of Knights and thought that Sophia would be more comfortable studying with a girl than with a rough man. Sophia was incredibly grateful to her maid, and she did not always sense such nuances and always came to the rescue on time. And now she did not let her down either. The self-defense teacher introduced herself. Her name is Amy Jean. She is a teacher from the Knights Order, and also the sister of Barry Jean, Prince Alexis's right-hand man. And she is at Sophia's disposal. And in their country, girls are forbidden to have knight status, so she is unofficially in the order. But she was trained by her brother and his friends, so there is no need to doubt her professionalism. Perhaps Sophia doubts her knowledge after the incident when she was taken hostage, but then the forces were too unequal. Raymond put more than a dozen of his best warriors against her. Sophia saw the girl only once, and then she looked very exhausted. And this is not surprising, because Amy was a hostage. Now she is in perfect shape and ready to work. The girl asked the Duchess not to worry. She was a good teacher and would be able to teach her everything she knew. In a week, she would be able to use basic self-defense techniques. Besides, the girl was aware of the whole situation and said that she would help Sophia in any way she could. Those who kidnapped her are direct enemies of the Duchess, so they will be allies. And Amy also said that the Royal Knightly Order is headed by Alexis. Therefore, all the guys from the organization are aware of Amy's kidnapping. They will also always come to the rescue. During the lessons, teacher Amy was not so sweet and gentle. She was a real knight and behaved as a real warrior should. So, at first, it was hard for Sophia. Amy explained this by saying that enemies were also not asleep. It was impossible to say for sure that Raymond and Samantha would not play on someone else's weakness, as they had done with her brother and the butler Lauren, and the girl was 100% right. You have to be constantly on guard and trust no one but your team. You never know where trouble will come from. The young teacher understood perfectly well that she owed her life to this sweet lady. If it were not for her and Prince Alexis, she would no longer be alive, and her brother would remain a traitor forever. Lessons with Amy were very difficult. Sophia could not do many things, and the teacher concluded that perhaps the Duchess simply did not have the ability for this. Even as a child, Duke Edelball wanted to teach her to defend herself. But even then, the girl couldn't do anything, and her parents abandoned the idea. Perhaps she is too feminine and delicate. But her teacher didn't give up. Amy insisted that even if you have very little ability, you can always learn the basics of self-defense. You just have to be tougher with your student. The young Duchess knew she had to work hard to learn how to protect herself and those close to her. She had to cope with this and not be a burden to Alexis and her father. A few days later, Alexis received a letter from Sophia. In it, the girl wrote that she had discovered a spy in her father's estate. It turned out to be the butler Laurent, who had worked for the Duke for many years. Barry was happy for his friend. At first, he thought Alexis I wanted a relationship, but now he saw the man's eyes light up when he read the letter from the girl. Alexis was really very pleased. This girl is incredible. She is smart, brave, and also very beautiful. Perhaps she will really help him achieve the status of crown prince. It was at that moment that Alexis realized that he missed Sophia. He told Barry that it was time to end the war and return to the capital. They had a lot of things to do there. A few days later, during training, a maid appeared in the garden, out of breath. But she brought great news. The war was finally over. Alexis's army was returning to the capital. Sophia smiled and breathed a sigh of relief. This time, everything ended very quickly. Last time, this war took a whole month. Thank God, everything ended well. Or perhaps the military actions ended much faster because this time Prince Barry's right hand did not betray him, but on the contrary, helped him in everything. The news about the end of the war quickly spread throughout the empire. The people rejoiced and praised Prince Alexis. It was thanks to him that the war ended quickly, and most importantly, with victory. On Sunday, the townspeople gathered in the capital's main square to greet the army of the first Prince Alexis, who was returning home. Everyone wanted to thank the soldiers and congratulate them on their victory. How handsome the first prince was! He sat relaxed in the saddle, and his face expressed absolute calm and self-confidence. Sophia could not take her eyes off the guy. In order not to attract unnecessary public attention, Sophia did not go out to the square to meet the prince, but watched the entire process from the window of her mansion. And only Ani saw how much she admired this man. For the first time, Sophia wanted to look her best because she was going to meet Alexis soon. She called her maid to help her choose the perfect outfit and do her hair. The girls climbed into the closet and began choosing dresses. The celebration of the victory and the return of the Imperial Army home would soon begin. They should prepare well, and then came the culmination moment. The celebration began. Sophia was a little late, so the eyes of the entire audience at the ball were riveted on her. The girl looked simply delightful. Previously, Sophia chose her outfit for the holidays so that it would perfectly match Samantha's outfit, because they were always together. But at today's ball, everything was completely different. Now there was no need for this, and it was clear that Samantha was simply furious with her friend's image. Now everyone saw how different these girls were in both appearance and character. Sophia's younger brother Clifford ran up to her. He responded to the girl with a bunch of compliments and asked her to hurry, otherwise they would miss the return of the troops to the palace. The boy was fascinated by various war stories, so Prince Alexis, who led the Imperial Army, was his idol. Clifford could not miss such a spectacle. For some reason, Sophia remembered that last time Samantha and Raymond did not spare her brother and killed him in cold blood before her eyes. But now she will prevent such an outcome. The emperor appeared in the hall, and all present fell silent and bowed. The emperor said that today they would thank the knights who had brought another victory to the empire. Then His Majesty asked the commander of the army, the first Prince Alexis, to approach the imperial throne. He bowed calmly and approached the emperor. Only now did Sophia get a better look at the first prince. Thank God he was not injured. He was still confident and calm. So the girl breathed a sigh of relief and continued to watch what was happening. The emperor congratulated Alexis on his victory in another war and said that he was ready to fulfill any wish of the first prince. He deserved it because this battle was very important for the state. There was silence. Everyone wanted to hear Alexis's wish, and he voiced it. The prince wants the emperor to allow him to betroth to the daughter of Duke Edelball, Miss Sophia. At this moment, it wasn't just the Duchess herself who was shocked. Everyone present simply gaped in surprise. How was this possible? Sophia was going to marry Raymond. You should have seen Raymond's face. He was ready to hear anything, but not such a request. It was at this moment that all his vile plans collapsed. If the emperor agreed, he would never see the status of crown prince. The courtiers began to whisper loudly. Why was Alexis doing this? Didn't he know that Miss Sophia was preparing for her engagement to Prince Raymond? And why was he just standing in the corner and saying nothing? The emperor asked those present to remain silent for a moment, and then asked Alexis if he knew that the young duchess was to become engaged to Raymond in the near future. Alexis's handsome face seemed to remain perfectly still. He said he knew about the girl's engagement, but he couldn't do anything because he had been in love with Miss Sophia for a long time. In order not to spoil the situation, Sophia ran up to the emperor and confirmed Alexis's words. Plus, she said that she also loved this young man very much. She came even closer to the emperor and began to tell him that she could not live without Alexis. She begged the head of state to bless their engagement and subsequent wedding. The young men fell on their knees before the emperor in submission, but he asked them to rise and said that, as a reward, he would grant them his high blessing for the union. At that very moment, a loud shout from those present and applause was heard throughout the hall. It was a surprise for everyone, but it turned out very nice. Alexis and Sophia are a very beautiful couple. The only one who was not happy about this event was Raymond. His face was distorted with anger and hatred towards these two. How could His Majesty the Emperor do this? He had always been the beloved son and had great support. Sophia also secretly looked at the traitor, and she was satisfied with the result. It seemed that he was not amused, and he certainly did not expect this. He was outdone by a girl who always danced to someone else's tune. Sophia and Alexis bowed to the emperor once more and thanked His Highness for the honor. Now everything would go according to their plan, and a worthy man would ascend to the post of crown prince. During all this fuss, no one paid attention to Samantha, who was standing to the side. She was also shocked by this news, but now she will help Raymond become the crown prince. A new game begins. There were still rumors going around the hall that Sophia was supposed to be engaged to Raymond. But Duke Edelball approached the emperor, bowed, and asked to speak. He told His Majesty that his daughter has long been in love with Prince Alexis, and rumors about the engagement with Raymond are just rumors, and he fully supports his daughter's choice. The emperor calmed down. The influential duke put everything in its place. He is not against his daughter's wedding with his son Alexis. Therefore, His Majesty sees no reason to refuse the engagement. The emperor then said that the crown prince had not yet been chosen. All of his children had equal rights to this title, so he needed to think about it and make a serious decision. Raymond was incredibly angry that the emperor was talking so openly about the title of crown prince, and that he had not yet decided who would get it. This meant that his father had doubts about his candidacy, and the title could be given to Alexis. Alexis thanked His Majesty for the honor of having the opportunity to become crown prince, and said that he would try very hard to justify the trust of the emperor and all the people of their country. Always tried to give everyone their due. However, although he admitted that the ally played a significant role in the war, the problem was that most of the aristocracy did not support the second prince. Now that this issue has been publicly resolved, the emperor can openly announce his second son to the contenders for the title of crown prince, and it will be fair to everyone. Raymond began to panic and felt even more anger and hatred towards his brother and ex-fiancée. His chances of getting the title of crown prince were getting smaller and smaller. He could no longer tolerate public disgrace and decided to leave the event. But this is not the end. He will definitely come up with something to get this title, and will definitely take revenge on everyone for the humiliation. How long ago did that stupid girl discover his plans? She had never been interested in state affairs. She was a complete fool. But it turned out that Raymond was deeply mistaken. Behind the mask of stupidity and naivety hid a sharp mind and insight. She saw through him and knows exactly what he is planning. Raymond was pounding his fists against the wall so hard in rage that his hands were bleeding. Samantha couldn't watch this calmly, so she tried her best to calm the prince down. She needed to think about what to do next. The prince assumed that this upstart had changed radically, and, probably, she guessed about their secret love affair. Therefore, Samantha is also at risk and must be on guard. More than anything, Samantha didn't want to be embroiled in this unpleasant and public situation. She didn't sign up for this, and she doesn't intend to ruin her reputation. When everything calmed down a bit, Sophia and Alexis decided to go out onto the balcony to have some alone time. The girl said that she was very worried about the prince's life and was waiting for him to come home from the war safe and sound. Alexis smiled and said that the successful end of the war was possible only thanks to the girl. If it weren't for her, he wouldn't have been able to return to the capital alive. Sophia blushed and replied that she could not act differently. Injustice and meanness must be punished. Besides, Alexis deserved to become the crown prince. The prince smiled, and it was so beautiful and pleasant that the girl was simply drowning in warm feelings. How lucky she was to get rid of the traitor Raymond and meet such a wonderful man. But the girl didn't have to admire the prince's smile for long. Suddenly, he became serious and asked what they would do next, because the fight seemed to be just beginning. Yes, it is very little that the Edelball family will support the prince. Even if Alexis becomes the crown prince, we should not forget that he is not from a noble family. And this plays an important role. The title of crown prince is not enough. Alexis will have to face many obstacles from the nobility. At first, he will not be accepted, so the young man will have to stand up much stronger to pass all the tests. Luckily, Alexis understood this very well, so he was ready to listen to the advice of Duke Edelball and Sophia. They would definitely come up with a good plan of action. It seemed that after the incident with the kidnapping of his friend's sister, the prince began to trust the girl completely. This was a good indicator, and Sophia had already thought about how to proceed. Fighting the system alone would be a stupid idea. So the girl decided that they needed to find reliable allies to achieve their goal. Alexis is supported by the common people, as well as the army. Duke Edelball also says he will provide assistance from his side, but the prince also has enough opponents. No matter how you look at it, the games are very complicated and cruel. Therefore, Alexis needs to get as many followers as possible and secure the support of influential families. Alexin didn't even doubt that Sophia had already figured out how they would act next. And she really had. They would help the prince's younger brother. Firstly, Alex will not become a crown prince just by being engaged to the duke's daughter. The young man will also need support from the outside. That is what they will try to get. All sons of the emperor have the right to become heir and receive the title of crown prince. But for this, origin and useful connections are equally important. Thus, the first Prince Alexis, the son of the ruler's mistress, loses out to Raymond in many ways. Since the aristocracy attaches great importance to pedigree, it is precisely the second principle that enjoys their favor. Although Sophia Edelball's family may have great influence in high society, it will obviously not be enough in this brutal and complex struggle. More help is needed. His engagement to a ducal girl gave Alexis a chance, just enough to get the title, but it will take all his efforts to keep it. Secondly, Alexis lacks reliable and influential allies. Currently, the only aristocratic people on his side are the Edelball family and the common people. But this is not enough. So the first thing the young people need to do is find like-minded people for Alexis. For starters, they need to reach out to those who would be happy to go against Raymond. Alexis finally understood what his younger brother had to do with it. Besides the two of them, the emperor has another son, Bruno Auckland, but he is always in the shadow of his older brothers. Prince Bruno led a rather modest and reclusive life. Therefore, the brothers communicated with each other very little. One could even say that they did not get along well. Raymond was very jealous of his brother Alexis, but only his birth played in his favor, and in other respects he was constantly losing to the second prince. That is why he planned to kill him. Alexis may not be in close contact with her second brother Bruno, but their relationship is still much warmer than with Raymond, and this needs to be emphasized. It would be nice to see him. If things were that bad, Bruno wouldn't have investigated Alexis's death in the war and the murder of the entire Edelball family. So he's the one to turn to. Sophia I remembers Raymond suddenly appearing outside her prison cell. He did not hide his joy. One more serious obstacle in his path was removed. Then Sophia asked who the vile traitor had killed this time. After all, her family and Alexis weren't everything. Raymond, not hiding his joy, answered that it was his brother Bruno. And he didn't care at all that Bruno was his younger brother. On his way to the status of crown prince, he eliminated absolutely all opponents, and even brothers. Unlike Alexis, Bruno had no intention of becoming crown prince. He was interested in other things. There was no need to kill him, but Raymond did it anyway. The traitor replied that as long as Bruno stayed out of politics, he would let him live. But suddenly, his brother felt suspicious about Alexis's death and began an investigation. He shouldn't have done that. Indeed, Bruno has always been known for his sharp mind. The boy quickly realized that something was wrong with the death of the second prince and began to sort out the details. There are many inconsistencies in his death, and if this truth lover had gotten to the truth, then Raymond would not have been able to avoid the emperor's disfavor, and the title of crown prince, even more so. Therefore, there was only one way out: to eliminate Bruno. Even then, Sophia realized that this man was a real monster. He would even walk over the corpses of his brothers to achieve his goal and receive the title of crown prince. But Raymond didn't care what Sophia thought. The next one this lunatic would kill would be her. And his hand wouldn't even tremble, because the girl was just a simple fool, a pawn in a big game. Since Alexis has already survived the war and is still alive, Bruno is the one who needs to be saved next. The guy needs their help right now, otherwise something irreparable might happen. Alexis really didn't see how he could help his brother. He had no influence, no great support. But Sophia said they needed to meet Bruno's mother. Arriving at the woman's estate in the evening, the young people saw that Bruno's mother was very ill. She was constantly in bed and required special care. But the woman was still very happy to see such guests. Even in her illness, she looked attractive. She was the second princess of the neighboring kingdom. It was unclear whether the woman was receiving the treatment she needed, or whether Raymond had tried here and wanted to wipe this woman out of the world. This needed to be sorted out immediately. While they were talking to the princess, someone entered the room. It was Bruno. He brought flowers to his mother. It seemed that no one present expected to see the third prince here. It seemed that Bruno was not delighted with the visit of his brother, especially with a girlfriend, or already a fiancée. But it was clear that his mother was glad to have guests. She was tired of lying in bed all alone. Bruno didn't trust them. He didn't trust anyone. That was the kind of person he was. He wasn't interested in palace intrigues. The guy was more worried about his mother's health. Alexis said that since Bruno was absent from the ceremony, the prince decided to come in person and announce his engagement to Miss Sophia Edelball. In addition, they would be able to get to know each other better. The princess was obviously pleased with this news. She smiled broadly and congratulated the young people. They were a wonderful couple, both handsome and very sweet, and the woman sincerely wished them happiness. It was clear from Bruno's behavior that he valued his mother very much. Therefore, in order to gain the guy's support, it was necessary to help the princess and get her on her feet. Bruno Auckland was the third prince of the empire and the son of the princess of the Middle Kingdom, Lee Raquel. The boy was radically different from his older brothers. He was almost never remembered, as if he did not exist. And probably not even all the inhabitants of the country knew that there were not two, but three crown princes. Bruno simply did not like unnecessary attention and always avoided it. In order to avoid participating in the struggle for the throne and the title of crown prince, he deliberately led a reclusive lifestyle and tried to avoid social events, such as balls and receptions at the palace. His mother knew that her son was very talented. He also came from a very influential royal family. He could easily gain favor with the aristocracy, but he didn't need it. If Sophia and Alexis manage to convince the guy to side with them, they will get a very reliable ally. He is not stupid and understands the situation. In addition, he does not need to lie. He likes honesty. When Alexis's misfortune happened, the guy immediately had doubts about his death. He was not afraid to investigate this case. Raymond has no power over Bruno, and this is the main trump card. After chatting a little more with the princess, the young people wanted to talk to Bruno himself. The guy asked his mother to say goodbye to the guests, as she should not overwork herself. The woman was, of course, against it. She wanted more communication. But the son assured that it would be better this way. Her condition really improved, but she was still very weak, and overexertion was harmful for a woman. The princess had to say goodbye to Alexis and Sophia. She was really a little tired, so she asked the young people to come at any time convenient for them. She is always happy to see them. When everyone left the sick woman's room, Bruno asked the guests directly about the real purpose of their visit. He strongly doubted that they simply wanted to visit his mother. It was clear that Bruno was far from stupid. He tried to look friendly to disappoint his mother, but now he shows his true nature. Although he tries to look ordinary, you can't call him that. Sophia had no choice. She didn't want to seem suspicious, but she might not have another chance, so now she had to make the prince believe what she was saying. Sophia informed Bruno that his mother had a maid who had worked for her longer than anyone else. This woman should be fired immediately, and the girl knew what she was talking about. The prince began to protest. He did not understand what the guest was saying. This servant had been working for them since the moment their family arrived in the kingdom. He had never met a more devoted person. But the girl's next words made the man think. If he wanted to save his mother and himself, he would immediately throw this woman out. Sophia said that she knew for sure that the maid had been adding poisonous substances to the princess's food for a long time. They had a slow-acting effect, which is why the prince's mother could not recover. If he doesn't trust the girl, he can just secretly spy on the maid's actions. Every evening, she sings her a herbal decoction and adds poison to it. Bruno became nervous. This couldn't be. His mother had been examined by the best doctor in the empire, and he said that the woman had a rare incurable disease. Therefore, the princess's condition was simply maintained with medication. Sophia couldn't call Bruno naive, but here he had clearly missed the point. The doctor had long been in cahoots with Raymond and his mother's maid. If the guy doesn't believe her now and doesn't take any action, then in less than 6 months, his mother will die. But she won't die from an illness, but from poisoning. If he doesn't listen to the girl now, he will regret it later and will be left without a loved one. So it is better to act now to save the life and health of the princess. And 6 months later, the maid, tormented by guilt, will commit suicide, leaving only a note. In it, she will say that she was threatened and had no other choice. In the past, Raymond had gotten busy, and no one had found out about the contents of this note. The scoundrel simply destroyed it, just as he destroyed the information that Bruno's mother's death was his doing. When Sophia was in prison, Raymond bragged about her a lot. In that, he dealt not only with his brother Bruno, but also with his family. Because, unlike Alexis, his family is also very influential. The third prince listened attentively. He had no reason not to believe the young men, but he still warned them that if their accusations were unfounded, they would not get away with a simple, "It was a misunderstanding." Then Alexis said that if their joint plan fails, he will take full responsibility. He is not afraid of this and asks to trust him. No one has ever complained that he can deceive. This surprised both Bruno and Sophia, but they agreed. And Bruno offered to test the young people's theory, since they had already come so far. It seemed he agreed to help them, but then Bruno asked, if everything turns out to be true, what will he owe these guys? After all, in this world, no one does anything for anyone for nothing. The exception is 2 lovers. But this is not their option. Sophia, of course, expected this question from a man. He is a strategist and is used to looking into the future. Therefore, she answered immediately that Bruno will become their reliable ally and will receive their absolute support and protection. The prince has probably already heard some rumors. The fact is that Sophia really wants to make Alexis crown prince. But for this, there is not enough support from influential people. Bruno said he had heard about it. The prince couldn't come to the victory party because he was courting his mother, but he basically understood why Alexis wanted the engagement. He also knows that Sophia has started taking self-defense lessons, and he thinks it's a very good idea. It won't hurt the future crown prince's bride, because she needs to be constantly on guard against enemies. Wow, Bruno is well aware of this. I wonder why he follows Sophia's life. Maybe he's just curious, but it's worth thinking about. This man is not as simple as he seems. His skills in information gathering are simply amazing. Only thanks to this, in her past life, Sophia was able to figure out that Raymond was involved in Alexis's strange death. Bruno is truly a unique person, and that's a fact. Even though he rejected the help of influential relatives on his mother's side, this does not at all diminish the benefits of their union. Sophia said frankly that her ducal family would support Alexis in every way, but His Highness would still be surrounded by numerous enemies. Therefore, they needed a person they could trust unconditionally. Sophia made it clear to Bruno that they needed him to fight Raymond. With his intelligence and insight, they could win these palace games. The prince understood that these people were not trying to deceive him at all. They had no need for that. But what should he do? First of all, he had to test them for vodka, and only then could he tell whether it was true or not. Now he had nothing more to say to the guests, and he asked them to go back to the imperial palace. When he figured out the spy in his house, he would definitely inform them, and they would meet again. Alexis asked Sophia why she chose Bruno as an ally. The girl answered that he was the heir to the royal family of a neighboring state, and that very influential people were behind him. The bond between him and his family cannot be broken, even if you want to. And if he agrees to sleep with them as an ally, then it is quite possible that his family will support Alexis. He is also very smart. Any detective would envy his insight. He is not a public figure and always remains in the shadows. And Raymond is afraid of him. Bruno is not mired in gossip and intrigue. He still hides his true potential. But the most important thing is that he is not going to side with Raymond. Alexis looked at Sophia carefully. A logical question arose in his mind. Why was the girl so confident in what she was doing? She didn't even have any doubts about her success. But the girl couldn't tell the truth, that she had already seen the future. She had even been there. She had seen her sister's death, his death in the war, and Bruno's murder. So now everything had to change. Alexis said that each of them has secrets, and he understands that Sophia has a secret too. But she is not obliged to tell him about them. He owes her his life. That is why he does not doubt her words and actions. The girl even felt a little awkward. By and large, she was hiding almost the entire truth from him, but she promised the man that she would definitely tell him everything someday. After arriving, Alexis walked Sophia to the carriage and sent her to her parents' house. Yes, full of mysteries, but it's very attractive. Perhaps he even likes it. Still, Alexis hoped that this girl was sent to him by fate itself. The man pulled out a precious pendant from his inside pocket. A sad smile appeared on his face. He remembered his mother. She was very kind and incredibly beautiful. It was not for nothing that the emperor himself fell in love with her, and then Alexis appeared. But then everything went wrong. All he had left from his beloved mother was a single pendant, and he kept it close to his heart. He would definitely keep his promise to his mother. He would not stray from his path, and she would be proud of him. Lately, Governess Anya always brought very good news. This morning was no exception. The girl dragged a newspaper with news into the Duchess's bedroom. Sophia immediately began reading and opened her mouth in surprise. This can't be. The press published an article about a servant trying to poison the wife of the king of a neighboring state. The criminal was caught by His Highness Alexis. Now the girl understood what Prince Bruno had said yesterday and what he had meant. He had said that he had to check the information about his mother's maid and would tell the result tomorrow. And tomorrow had come. This was simply wonderful news. She did not doubt Bruno's insight for a second. Alexis's reputation was bound to rise now. Sophia expected nothing less from the third prince. She called Ani to her room again and asked her to prepare a wonderful outfit for her. She needs to visit a certain place. She goes to the person who spreads the right rumors. The girl picked up Alexis, and they went to the Bruno family home together. A few hours later, they were there. They needed to discuss the next steps. It seemed that Bruno and his mother had been waiting for them for a long time. The guy sat by the woman's bed, as if on pins and needles, and his face, as always, was imperturbable. The woman was also excited. The sick princess still could not believe that her faithful servant Emma, who had served in their house for many years, turned out to be a vile traitor. How could she trust people after that? Bruno leaned sharply towards his mother. He understood that the woman should not worry under any circumstances. She was still very weak, so she required absolute peace, and some news only upset her. Sophia looked at the poor woman with a sad smile. To experience the betrayal of a person to whom you trusted absolutely everything, even the most intimate, is a big blow. She understands her perfectly. The girl herself had recently encountered a similar situation. She trusted her friend Samantha and shared with her absolutely all the facts of her life. She is very familiar with the feelings of the sick princess, but tears alone won't help the grief. Bruno has already called the doctor and he examined his mother. Judging by the state of her body, the woman will finally return to normal as soon as the poison leaves her body. Bruno was also shocked by the situation. Okay, the maid, but how could their family doctor be involved in such a scam? And how miraculously did Sophia find out about all this? The girl expected this question, because it is logical that it looks very suspicious on Bruno's part. But to avoid a direct answer, she said that her family's possibilities are almost limitless. The third prince seemed satisfied with this answer. The powerful Edelbel family's influence is truly limitless. They are a real information network, and this really helps. Sophia, in turn, asked where Bruno had put the criminal. She could not be handed over to the Imperial Police, otherwise they could ruin the whole case. For now, it was better to hide her. Bruno asked the girl not to think of him as a fool. It is clear that he did not tell anyone anything. But that is for now. He is waiting for the right opportunity. Then she will definitely be executed. Sophia assumed that this woman must have valuable information, since she cooperated with Raymond. But, as it turned out, the maid refused to talk, even though she was caught in the act. If she refuses to tell the whole truth, then the person she is trying to protect is still alive. To make her talk, she will have to save that person too. Raymond has probably read the news in the paper by now, and he's certainly furious. And if that's the case, there's a slim chance that the boy he stole from the maid is still alive. Sophia couldn't miss the opportunity to talk to the traitorous servant. She asked Bruno for permission to see the woman. Maybe she could find out something from her. Bruno was not against it, but he decided to go down to the dungeon with Sophia and eavesdrop on her conversation with the maid. Not because he trusted the girl, he was just curious. Sophia asked the woman not to worry, because she was completely safe. Those who threatened her loved ones did not know where she was, or where she was at all. Sophia walked straight up to the maid and looked her in the eyes. Then she said that the woman could tell her the whole truth. She was not an enemy and wanted to help her, so that she could do them a favor in turn. The woman burst into tears and said that her son had been stolen. In order to get her child back, she had to put poison in her mistress's food every day. That was the whole secret. But if she told anyone about it, her son would die. The girl heard Alexis's jaws clench in anger, and Bruno's face changed. Everyone knew whose dirty hands were at work. This was Raymond's favorite tactic. Everyone understood that there was not a second to lose. Sophia promised to save the servant's son, but in return she had to promise to testify in court against Raymond. The poor woman cried and thanked the girl. She was very ashamed. For many years she had served her mistress faithfully and truly. And if her son had not been kidnapped, it would have continued like this. But the woman was told that it was too early to thank the young men. They had to act quickly before Raymond and his dastardly allies noticed anything and saved the child. Suddenly, a strange whistle was heard, as if an arrow was flying. And Alexis was not mistaken, it was a spear. He managed to grab Sophia with lightning speed and throw her aside. He managed to save Sophia. The spear whistled right over their heads, but, to the great regret of everyone present, they were unable to save the servant. The weapon hit her right in the chest and pierced her body. How? How did this happen? Why? The woman is dead, and there is no way to save her. Or maybe they weren't aiming at Emma at all, but at Sophia. The important thing is that the enemies are not asleep and are watching them to hide the truth. Sophia screamed for the door to be opened quickly. This woman had to be saved. She had to tell them where her child was. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to save the boy, just as they couldn't protect his mother. While Emma still had the strength to speak, she told him that her son was being held in a tower on the edge of town. There was a dungeon there, and she had gone there to make sure that the boy was there and still alive. The woman could not say anything else. She simply begged to save her son and take care of him. These were her last words, after which her heart stopped beating. Vile coward and traitor Raymond. He must pay for his deeds, and Sophia, together with the princes, will see to it that he suffers the most severe punishment. This she promises. Let him not think that he has scared Alexis and his team. He is gloating now, but it will not last long. We must hurry to the outskirts of the city, so that this monster does not have time to deal with the boy. Alexis reminded them that there was no time to lose. Emma was beyond help, but her son was still in danger, and only they could save him. So they had to hurry before Raymond got there first. How she hated that bastard Raymond. He was a real monster since he didn't spare the mother of a small child, and he kept the boy in the dungeon. He would commit any murder for the sake of his goal. Bruno remembered that their maid had married a man from a neighboring town a few years ago. Indeed, they had a child, a boy of about 10. He sometimes came with Emma to their estate, and Bruno also remembered that this woman's husband had been killed by some unknown person right before her eyes, and she was left with only one son, whom she loved madly. The man's killers were never found. Of course, it couldn't be otherwise. This lunatic leaves no traces. If Raymond didn't lie to her in the prison cell, then to intimidate Emma, he did it to her husband. He showed this woman that he was not joking at all, and so that the woman would believe that he would stop at nothing. Killing a child would not be difficult for him. Bruno was smart but callous. He asked why they would save a criminal's child. What good would it do them? They didn't even know him, and he'd only met him a couple of times. Such words simply drove Sophia crazy. She screamed that the child was not guilty of anything, and they would not be as inhuman as Raymond, so they would pull the boy out of the dungeon. Alexis supported the girl. He also believed that Emma had paid enough for her actions. Now she needs to take care of the child. He was left without both parents. The prince realized that he had said nonsense. Now they would think he was a cruel monster. So he apologized and said that he would not mind releasing the boy from captivity. Of course, he was in. They won't just save an innocent soul. This boy will be a valuable witness when they prove Raymond's guilt. But the killer mustn't know that the boy was saved. At the right moment, they will ask the boy to tell how Raymond made his mother put poison in the princess's food. And then the whole truth about his misdeeds will come out. The higher powers gave her a chance to live the last 2 years again. And it's not just like that. She must correct her mistakes and make sure that the right and worthy person takes the title of crown prince. By evening, the young men had reached the outskirts of the city. The tower could not be confused with another building, so they drove as close to it as they could. There was a guard there. Sophia had a bitter experience of rescuing Amy from captivity. Then she was simply useless because she did not know how to attack or defend herself. This time everything will be different. Having deceived and eliminated the guards, the young people carefully opened the door inside the tower. It was dark there, but when the eyes got used to it, and it was possible to see at least something, it turned out that it was empty inside. It was an ordinary bar, but it seemed like it was just a cover to hide something important from prying eyes, something that no one should see. And Raymond tried. He's no fool. They found nothing, although they searched every corner. But suddenly, Alexis remembered that before her death, Emma told them that there was a secret dungeon in the room. The boy was there. It was a good thing Bruno went with them. He walked around the room for a bit, then pushed aside the barrels near the buffet. Behind them was a secret door. This guy was a real detective. The young people were very happy. Without him, Alexis and Sophia probably wouldn't have managed. Opening the secret door, they saw a staircase that led down. That's where the dungeon was. Sophia was once again convinced that the prince was smart as hell. But he hides it very well and pretends to be an ordinary, extraordinary guy. But his mental abilities can only be envied. It was so dark in the dungeon that Sophia couldn't even see her hands. But they heard some sounds and movement in the corner. Looking closely, the young people saw a small silhouette. The girl immediately rushed to the side where the child was lying. But she stopped immediately because something sharp was put to her throat. It was a knife. Someone else was here besides the boy. The girl was seriously scared, but she didn't show it and decided not to twitch. Her life would still be useful to her. The stranger ordered the men to throw their weapons on the ground and move away. Then someone lit a torch, and it became clear that the stranger was not alone. There was a whole group of killers. They surrounded the young men. This time, Raymond was much better prepared. Alexis suggested that they leave peacefully, otherwise they would have to fight, and he does that very well. But the strangers were also well prepared. Nothing personal, they were just doing their job. Even the genius Bruno couldn't figure out that it was all a setup. They were simply lured into a trap. The strangers confirmed it and laughed. Their plan had worked perfectly. Sophia was the most upset. She believed that everything happened because of her. Without thinking, she rushed down the stairs to quickly save the boy. In the first minutes, she thought that she had become a burden to the guys again. But then she remembered the words of her self-defense teacher. You should never give up. She knows defense techniques. She gathered all her strength and remembered what Amy had taught her for a month. Then the girl suddenly turned around and kicked the invader in the leg with all her might. No one expected this. Amy taught that you can't defeat a woman by force. Therefore, you have to rely on speed and the element of surprise. And that meant that Sophia had to disorient her opponent. She twisted her free arm and hit the guy in the solar plexus with her elbow as hard as she could. He didn't think the girl was capable of that, so he didn't expect such a turn of events. The next second, Sophia delivered a crushing blow to the killer's jaw. He fell to the ground and seemed to no longer breathe. It looked very impressive, so everyone just stood and watched. Alexis was the first to come out of his stupor. He ran up to the girl and said that he was proud of her success. She didn't expect that from herself either. It turns out that the lessons with Amy weren't in vain. And then everyone turned their attention to Bruno and the bunch of murderers who were already lying on the ground. The third prince said that they could calm down. He had already done everything. He had simply killed all these idiots. No one present even thought that a man like Bruno could handle a sword. Today, he surprised everyone. The guy himself said that he was still far from being a professional. But he knew a few things. Sophia just opened her mouth in surprise. Yes, indeed. Talented people are talented in everything. But the guy replied that he preferred to work with his head, instead of swinging a sword in all directions. Here, a small silhouette appeared from behind the barrels. Then, a minute later, a small, exhausted boy came out to those present. He was so scared that he couldn't even talk. Sophia ran up to him and wanted to hug him. She told the child that there was no need to be afraid of them. They had come to save him and would not harm him. But the first thing the boy said was that he wanted to go to his mother. There was a terrible pause, and it seemed to last forever. The girl spoke first. She said that they would talk about Mom a little later. First, he had a lot to tell them. First, what was his name? The child said his name was Leo. We couldn't hear anything more from him, because the child lost consciousness. Fortunately, the girl managed to catch him. Probably, these monsters were starving him. For this killer Raymond, this little one was just another pawn. The boy meant nothing to him. He locked the child in the basement and did not even make sure that they left him any food. It was no longer worth staying in the basement of the tower. Raymond's accomplices could come here, and then they would be in trouble. It was necessary to leave immediately and bring the boy to his senses. Alexis's expression changed noticeably. All these troubles are happening because of him. Everyone wants to help him, but it doesn't work out very well. People start dying, and it becomes dangerous. The team decided that Emma's baby should be left at Duke Ellebal's estate. It would be much safer there than at Prince Bruno's house. Besides, no one knew who had saved him. It was already late at night when the young people reached Sophia's house. The boy had come to and was sleeping peacefully in Alexis's arms. They had to put him to bed, and the girl called her maid. But it turned out that Ani had not come running just like that, but with news. It turned out that Sophia's friend, Mrs. Samantha, had been adopted by the ducal house of Boldega, and now she would become an influential person in society. How can this be? From today on, she officially became part of this family, known to the entire empire, and the news spread like wildfire throughout the entire country. The girl also handed her mistress an envelope and said that a stranger had brought a letter to their house and asked her to give it to Sophia. But Ani suspects that it was a messenger from Samantha. Indeed, this letter was written to her by her former friend Samantha, who turned out to be a traitor. She informed her that she had been adopted and also became the bride of His Highness Raymond. But that's not all. It turns out they're throwing a big party to celebrate their engagement. There will be a lot of influential people. Of course, Samantha would like Sophia to come too. How could this be? They had outsmarted Alexis and her, fooled them like idiots. So the traitors somehow found out about Sophia's plans. It follows that someone is telling them information. In order to gain reliable support in society, they managed to introduce Samantha into the ducal family. The Boldega family is second only to the ducal family of Edelbal in terms of influence in the country. They pulled off a big scam. They lured Alexis and Sophia out of town and bought themselves enough time to set things up. They managed to get Samantha into the ducal family. Sophia knew that Raymond and his mistress were dreaming of outwitting the Edelbal family, so they jumped at the opportunity to make a duchess out of Samantha. She was left a fool. Until now, the Boldega family could not compete with her family. However, her father openly sided with Alexis, the son of a simple servant. And now things are not so clear. Samantha has entered the Boldega family and also become Raymond's fiancée. And that's bad, because she'll gain even more influence among the country's aristocrats, and that will make things more difficult for Sophia. Bruno studied the letter carefully. Samantha wrote about the date and time. The celebrations were to take place in the evening at the imperial castle, so they wanted to kill two birds with one stone. Sophia and Raymond don't expect to show up at this celebration of lies and deceit, but Sophia will surprise them. She will come, and not alone, but will bring Alexis and Bruno with her. The imperial palace really did hold a grand celebration. It was a real celebration of hypocrisy. Raymond and Samantha smiled falsely, feeling their victory was near. All the guests listened to the pretend speech of the first prince, who announced that they had gathered today to announce the news that he and Samantha had become engaged today and would soon be married. Sophia watched this from afar and understood that these traitors were not very good actors. All they wanted was to gain more influence from the famous families in society. Raymond also happily announced that from now on, his bride would be a part of the Boldega clan and would become an integral part of it. In other words, their influence in society would become much stronger. Raymond was simply drowning in the attention that was far-fetched. He said that he would never give up the fight for the title of crown prince and asked everyone present to support him. But at that moment, Alexis raised his hand and thus attracted the attention of those present. He said that in this fight for the title, the best must win, and it is definitely not Raymond. As Sophia had thought, no one expected them to show up for this party. But Samantha pulled herself together and approached the young duchess. She forced a smile and greeted her friend. Samantha pretended to apologize, saying that she was afraid to admit to her friend that she had feelings for Raymond for a long time. But she did not want to do this and ruin their relationship, so she kept silent. But Sophia decided to play along. She would smile and play the fool, but she would never forgive her for betraying her and for tumbling with Raymond behind her back. Sophia said that she was very happy for her friend, and that she had long suspected that Samantha and Raymond were secretly in love with each other. Therefore, she wishes happiness to her friend and the first prince. She didn't regret leaving Raymond one bit. He was a mean and very cruel man. Samantha would have to find out, but it would be too late. He would easily kill her too, if that was necessary for the title. She doesn't need a man who so easily betrays loved ones and plays with their lives for his own vile interests. She never loved him, and now she sincerely hates him. Sophia hugged Alexis and said that everything fell into place, and each of them found their true love, and they are happy. She is also now the bride of such a wonderful and respected prince. Thus, having played to the public, Sophia found herself in an advantageous situation. She, it seems, stepped over herself for the sake of her friend's happiness and gave her her fiancé. Let Samantha explode with anger. These people will stop at nothing. They did not hesitate to kill so many people. They did not hesitate to achieve their goal and gain the status of crown prince for Raymond. She will do everything to ensure that Alexis ascends to the throne. They cannot allow a murderer and traitor to rule their empire. The ruler must be an honest and brave man who will protect its inhabitants. Bruno joined the conversation here. He said that why only Raymond and Samantha were playing games. They were also a good team, and it was time for them to play a little and play on the opponent's nerves. Duke Boldega also smiled meanly. He hated the Edelball family, so he was happy about this state of affairs. It would work in his favor, and his family would become closer to the emperor and power. His smile was just as vile. She would neither forgive nor forget how he had given false testimony against her family, accusing Duke Edelball of orchestrating a coup in the country. She remembers very well how he lied in court, saying that some suspicious people were constantly coming to the Edelball's estate and that they did not look like law-abiding citizens. And the most terrible thing was that the court believed this scoundrel and her honest father was accused of all the sins of humanity. And then, cruelly and without remorse, they killed his entire family, including the servants. When Duke Edelball made excuses and insisted that he had done nothing of the sort, the vile Boldega showed the court forged documents that testified that her father was a criminal. And these documents were signed by the Duke. Her beloved and completely honest father was accused of terrible things, such as slave trading, organizing riots, and other terrible atrocities that were beyond her imagination. It was then that Boldega approached the Duke in court and said that such a man should be punished to the full extent of the law, and that his place would be taken by a worthy man, and it would be him. The court did not listen to Duke Edelball, nor were the townspeople's testimonies taken into account. Her father had been found guilty of terrible crimes, and the bribed judge did not want to hear any more evidence. Then her vile friend forced Sophia to watch her father being publicly branded and accused of things he had not done. It was far beyond her strength. The Duke was declared a traitor. Then Sophia realized how easy it is to lose everything if your enemies decide to destroy your family. They openly mocked and rejoiced at how easily other people's lives could be destroyed with one click of their finger. Samantha wasn't kidding. She said that for now they would deal with Duke Edelball, but then it would be her turn. She would make sure that her friend died in mortal agony. Alexis pulled her out of her sad thoughts. He saw that the girl was upset because of some memories, so he decided to ask what was going on and if the girl was okay. Now was not the time to be sad. He carefully took the girl's hand and said that she shouldn't worry about these freaks. Since she was given a second chance to change everything, she would do it, and he would help her in everything and support her. The girl felt so calm in her soul. But the calm was broken again. And this time it was Bruno. He asked the lovers to leave their personal world and return to reality. There is one matter. The young people were embarrassed. Was it really so obvious from the outside that they were simply drawn to each other, and that when they were together, the world became a little more beautiful and kinder? But there was nothing to do. There were urgent matters. Besides the fact that Bruno was smart and knew how to handle a gun, it turned out that he also had a great sense of humor. He asked the lovebirds not to be shy. They were engaged after all, so they had the right. Bruno decided to take his leave. But he said that he had an urgent matter. He could not yet tell all the information about what this matter was, but in the end, they would all be pleasantly surprised. Alexis and Sophia were already surprised. They thanked all the higher powers for having met this man. There was no doubt that this time the young man would come up with something interesting. Lately, every morning began with Ani bringing some news, and now this news was not always good. The girl handed the Duchess the morning newspaper again. Judging by the appearance of her maid, the news really wasn't very good. Sophia picked up the newspaper and, to be honest, was already afraid to read what had happened again and what they would have to get out of again. But still, she had to read it. But, to the girl's great and pleasant surprise, the news was wonderful. That's what Bruno meant when he said he had one urgent matter. Before the young Duchess had time to enjoy the news, Ani ran into the room again. But she was not alone. Alexis and Bruno were standing behind her. The guys seemed to be in an excellent mood. Bruno said hello and said that he didn't want them to come visit him anymore, so he decided to go to the capital and visit his friends. Of course, he didn't warn them about the visit. The girl joked that she hadn't invited anyone over so early, but in reality, she was incredibly happy to see the guys, each in their own way. She was especially happy to see Alexis in her house. The boys came to discuss the news in the newspaper today, namely, the article that the neighboring kingdom of Lyrquel declared that it would support His Highness Prince Alexis. Bruno's mother took care of that. The third prince smiled and said that it was not difficult at all. His mother loved Sophia and Alexis as if they were her own children, so she was ready to help them in any way. The boy said that it was not his style to make such mistakes. He was not happy with the way the Empire treated his mother, and he decided not to give up and wait for one of the princes to take the throne. Then he would return to his native kingdom. He was assessing his prospects in case one of his brothers won the fight for the imperial throne. And this smart guy had already developed a whole plan. Bruno said that he and his mother will support Alexis as long as necessary, and he will not leave the Empire until his brother wins. But there is one condition. After Alexis becomes crown prince, he wants to become prime minister. So it turned out that Bruno had his own interests in this fight, but they did not interfere with their plans. On the contrary, the young people were happy with this news. The third prince was an excellent candidate. But there was one but. Although Bruno's mother agreed to support Alexis, it would be a bit difficult. After all, the princess is a representative of a neighboring state. so she won't be able to play openly. No matter how things are, they are still on the rise. Now they are as strong as Raymond and have equal support from influential families. With Lyriquel's support, they have a chance to fight on. How grateful Sophia was to Bruno and his mother for everything they had done for her and Alexis. The truth would finally prevail, and they would bring this scoundrel and murderer Raymond to justice. But Bruno didn't expect praise from anyone. He simply always loved honest people and stood for justice. That's why he decided to help his older brother get the status of the crown prince of the empire. Raymond got rid of his younger brother because he found out the truth about how the Edible family died, as well as his older brother Alexis. And, perhaps, this scoundrel was simply afraid of Bruno. Having discussed all the details and made sure that their opponents did not have the opportunity to come up with a counter-move so quickly, Bruno decided to take his leave. He wants to visit his mother and spend some time with her. The third prince winked at the lovebirds and said that he was giving them a wonderful opportunity to be alone with each other for a while. After all, they should not forget that they were engaged. Let them discuss the wedding. And it's true. Lately, Sophia and Alexis have been busy trying to expose Raymond, and they haven't really talked about themselves or their future plans. Today, Alexis was especially handsome. As always, he was silent more than he spoke. But the girl was fine with it. She didn't like talkative people. And she felt safe next to this guy. She seemed to be staring at him because the guy asked her if she was okay, because she was looking at him and saying nothing. Sophia apologized and sheepishly asked if Alexis wanted to go for a walk in the garden. Of course he wanted. One might even say he dreamed of such a moment. Finally, they would be able to be alone, learn something about each other, communicate. After all, they were getting married soon, if anything. They went to the garden to the rose alley. It was really beautiful there. But it seemed that the young people felt a slight discomfort. Their conversation did not go well, and they were embarrassed of each other. The girl decided to break the silence and asked if the prince remembered their first meeting. They were still children. Her father took her with him to the imperial palace, but she was bored listening to state conversations, and she ran away to wander around the grounds. So she climbed into the garden and then got lost among the flower alleys. At first, she was afraid that they would not find her at all, and then Sophia met a boy who was also wandering among the rose bushes. The boy was incredibly handsome, but she would never have thought that he was a prince, the emperor's son. He greeted her and said that he was collecting a beautiful bouquet for his mother. Alexis stopped and smiled slightly. Then he said that he remembered that moment very well, and that he was very sorry that they met so late. He had not had a convenient moment to tell it. It's so strange. So many years have passed, but history seems to be repeating itself. They are walking among the rose bushes again, but only now as a bride and groom. It seems that life is slowly getting better. Suddenly, the boy became sad. It seemed he remembered something unpleasant, and the girl asked what happened. Alexis said that it was difficult for him to be in the imperial palace at that time. The girl asked for forgiveness. She understood perfectly well how the emperor's illegitimate son was treated in the palace. His mother was a simple servant, so the boy was constantly ridiculed. He was a real outcast and constantly suffered from bullying from Raymond's people, and he was about 9 years old then, and the girl couldn't understand how the guy managed to endure all this. Sophia thought that the boy was so strong because circumstances had hardened him since childhood. But this prevented him from enjoying simple things and pleasant moments. He is so young, but he smiles very rarely. This is what people do who were not loved as children. You need to help him somehow and make his life a little more fun. And the girl will definitely do this. Suddenly, Sophia asked why Alexis had decided to become crown prince. They had never talked about it. At first, she thought it was because of how he had been treated as a child. But there was another reason. It wasn't just a whim, a desire to show all these pompous people that he too meant something and could do something. There was some secret behind it that Sophia should find out. It seemed like the guy had been expecting this question for a long time, because he answered right away. He said that it was all just because of his mother. He promised that he would definitely take revenge no matter what. She and her mother lived in a foggy palace. It was the custom that inconvenient members of the imperial family were sent there to live. It was a very harsh land, terribly cold inside, and the same inside the castle. Because of this cold, Alexis's mother was often ill, and her health was very weak. The guy always worried about her and tried not to upset her over trifles. He was used to being strong since childhood. The boy's mother was a very bright and kind woman. She was not worried that she was sent far from the capital. She had the greatest treasure, her son, and he was close by, so he warmed her even in this cold land. The boy made sure that the woman did not get too cold, because she loved to walk outside and watch the snowfall. That's why Alexis always brought her a warm scarf and wrapped her up. They were not sent money. There were almost no servants, so the castle was in a deplorable state. The mother and son even had to save food and firewood to hold out longer. Alexis made sure his mother was always warm, so when the fire was not lit, he wrapped her in warm blankets. She hugged him and told him fairy tales and interesting stories. Maybe because the guy felt responsible from an early age, he was always serious and smiled little. It seems he didn't even know how to joke, and didn't particularly like to do so. All the emperor's children, official and illegitimate, received the same education. This was the law of the land. Therefore, Alexis came to the imperial palace during his education. The boy had to be in the same class with his two brothers. Since they were still small, Alexis did not feel any particular hatred from either Raymond or Bruno. But it got worse. Alexis showed good results and studied much better than Raymond, and this really pissed off the latter. He started to bully the boy and play all sorts of dirty tricks on him. The mother was the only person who knew how hard it was for her son. But he was so strong that he would endure all the mockery, and when he grew up, he would prove that he was worthy of becoming the heir to the throne. As a child, Alexis didn't understand why Raymond hated him so much. After all, he was the legitimate son of the emperor, lived in the palace, and had absolutely everything. He was no competition. He has a ton of servants who do his every bidding. He eats the best food and sleeps in a warm bed. He doesn't have to worry about how to get through the next day, unlike Alexis. Those with royal blood have equal rights to the throne. But Alexis did not have such a privilege, because his mother was a commoner, so he was treated as an extra. But Alexis's mother always told him that it is not only pedigree that plays a role in the fight for the throne. It is important to be a good person, to have merits for the state, and to love your people. And the boy understood that his life was only in his hands, so he studied diligently and then connected his life with military affairs and achieved significant success. In addition, all the inhabitants of the country loved him. Raymond had achieved absolutely nothing. He still lived in the imperial palace, and his anger towards the whole world was constantly growing. He hated Alexis with all his soul. The mother was very hurt and offended for her child. And what hurt even more was that she could not help him in any way. She was just there, suffering and loving him with all her heart. The emperor turned out to be a weak man and a bad father. He pretended not to notice anything. He sent Bruno to the kingdom to his mother, sent Alexis to the northern castle, and kept only Raymond with him. He always remained in the shadows. That's why the boy never smiled. He was not happy, never. He was hurt and offended. For himself, for his mother, and he wanted to restore justice. Whenever there was a celebration in the imperial palace, only Alexis was invited, and they forgot about his mother. Or they didn't want to see her. And the boy was always alone in such situations. Each such reception at the palace seemed like a real torture to Alexis. But he, gritting his teeth, came and endured the contemptuous glances of those around him and the hateful gaze of his brother Raymond. One day, the boy was invited to a ball on the occasion of the birthday of the Empress, Raymond's mother. And his mother sewed a suit for Alexis with her own hands. He was simply irresistible in it. But Raymond, when he saw Alexis in such a delightful outfit, was very envious, because he, being the first prince, could never look so beautiful and attractive. So he drove his brother away. But even this was not enough for the mean and pathetic prince. He found a bucket of dirty water and poured all the contents on his brother. Thus, he solved the problem, and there will be no one more beautiful than him at the celebration. Having said that the son of a commoner should not even stick his nose into such events, His place is at best in the stables. Let him go there. There is nothing to do here. Since the boy couldn't go inside the imperial palace like that, he decided to take a walk in the garden. There were lots of flowers there. There are no flowers in the foggy palace. It's cold there. So he'll pick a bouquet for his mother. That's when he saw a beautiful girl. She was also walking in the garden, but she seemed a little scared. Alexis had never seen her there before, and the girl, seeing the guy, froze in surprise. The girl was surprised that the boy was all dirty. His beautiful suit was all dirty. It seemed that he had bathed in a swamp, but there was not even a puddle. What happened to him? Then it became clear that someone had cruelly mocked the guy. She pulled out a handkerchief and began to wipe the stranger, and he stood there like a pillar and did not know how to behave in such a situation. When she cleaned the boy a little from dirt, it turned out that he was incredibly beautiful, but very sad. His eyes seemed to have never seen joy, and his lips did not spread into a smile. The girl then frankly told him straight to his face that he was very handsome. She had never seen such beautiful blue eyes before. But the boy looked in the mirror every day, but never thought about his beauty. And Sophia also said then that she had seen the first Prince Raymond, but his beauty would never compare to the beauty of this handsome stranger. And this phrase was remembered by the boy forever. No one had ever said such words to him. He was considered a second-class citizen, the son of a dirty commoner. In Raymond's opinion, the boy had no right to appear in the imperial palace at all. The girl asked him what his name was. And when she heard that his name was Alexis, she realized that he was the emperor's illegitimate son, and was very surprised. Why was the boy in such a state? She asked why the boy was not at the ball, but wandering among the flowers. He answered that everyone avoided him, because he was not a pure-blooded heir. His mother was an ordinary servant, so the attitude towards him was completely different. What she heard outraged Sophia. How can you humiliate a child just because his mother is not of royal blood? She is sure that the boy is much better in everything than the first Prince Raymond. The girl said that you can't give up under any circumstances. That's what her father teaches her. But the boy replied that he wouldn't go back to the palace. He'd rather pick the most beautiful bouquet for his mother. Sophia said that she came here with her father, Duke Edelbal. The emperor was having a reception, but she was bored inside. She didn't understand these conversations, so she ran into the garden to admire the flowers. The girl said that she also used to think that she would become the heir of the family. But something happened that changed everything. Her parents had a son, her younger brother, and now he will be the heir. The boy said that even though he was the emperor's son, Alexis could never become the heir and receive the title of crown prince, because there was Prince Raymond. And no matter how hard Alexis tried, nothing would work. He said that his mother is very worried about this situation. It hurts her to watch her child being abused, but her status does not allow her to change anything in this situation. The woman tried to explain that he was no worse than his brother. On the contrary, he was smart, trying to excel in his studies and practicing military bearing. Soon the empire would see that he was worthy of being the heir. For the sake of his mother, he is ready to develop further and become better, so that she smiles more often and is proud of her son. This is his dream, to become the crown prince and prove to everyone that he is the best. On that distant day, the girl said that she was sure that Alexis would become the emperor of their country in the future. He deserves it, that was already clear. She knows the nasty Raymond and knows what she is talking about. Then Alexis just smiled and replied that it wasn't as simple as it seemed to the girl. Raymond was very mean and wouldn't let him stand in his way. Besides, there was another crown prince, Bruno. They talked for a long time until they heard screams in the distance. It was the girl's father looking for his daughter. He was already starting to worry. So Sophia waved her hand at the guy and disappeared behind the rose bushes. But the boy called out to her and said that she might get lost here, so he would take her to the entrance of the palace. It would be better that way, and she would not waste time looking for a way out of the garden. Sophia was not used to this, but she saw and felt perfectly what Alexis felt in this palace. Everyone looked at him with disdain, and not a single person supported him. She felt very sorry for this boy. It is very difficult to be an outcast in such a high society. She did not understand at all why the father could not protect the child, because he was his son, just like Raymond. Alexis's appearance and his ruined suit did not allow the boy to go further. So he said goodbye to the girl, said that she helped him a lot, and motivated him well to move towards his dream. For the first time, the boy was praised by someone other than his mother, and he was extremely happy about it. A stranger gave him strength and energy to continue fighting and show everyone what he is worth. When the boy returned to the castle in the north, the mother almost fainted when she saw her son. What had happened to him? Someone must have beaten him and left him lying in a puddle. But why didn't he defend himself? The last thing Alexis wanted to do was upset his mother and tell her the truth about what had happened to him. So he said he had tripped and fallen in the mud, and then handed the woman the beautiful flowers. The woman hugged the child tightly. She knew that she had raised her son well, and that in the future he would definitely show all his enemies what he was capable of, and that he was worthy of being called the Crown Prince. After everyone had calmed down, the son told his mother about the wonderful girl he had met in the Imperial Garden. He was delighted by Sophia's beauty, intelligence, and most importantly, courage, and he really wanted to be like her. Well then, Mom just joked about him, saying that her boy fell in love for the first time. But that's normal. At his age, everyone falls in love with beautiful, smart girls. Already rubbing himself with soap in the bathroom and washing away the dirt, the boy thought that his mother had misunderstood him. It was not love, but pure admiration. And maybe a little love? Alexis just didn't know what love was. He had never experienced it before, and he hadn't thought about it, and he hadn't really had any interaction with girls. But he wouldn't mind seeing Sophia again. During dinner, the boy saw that his mother had put his flowers on the table and was looking at them often. He knew that she was pleased because it was very cold in their area and flowers did not grow here. But suddenly, something terrible and incomprehensible happened. The woman felt sick and fell from the chair to the floor, losing consciousness. Everything happened so quickly that the guy could not react. The doctor came, and as it turned out later, his mother suffered from a fatal disease. She did not tell her son this so as not to upset the child and tried to hide the truth as long as possible. But everything comes to an end, and now Alexis sat by his mother's bed, not understanding what to do next. The first thing he needed to do was make sure the woman got back on her feet. The boy blamed the emperor for forgetting about his mother's existence and sending her to the ends of the earth so as not to anger the official queen and her son, Raymond. He acted very meanly, but the mother thought differently. She told Alexis that when she was pregnant with him, the queen wanted to kill her. But the emperor came up with a way out and sent the woman away to the Misty Castle, thus saving her and her son. Their services are very few, not because the emperor spared money for them. On the contrary, the queen could harm the woman and the child through strangers. Therefore, only reliable and proven servants lived with them in the castle. His Majesty did not visit them, not because he did not want to or because he was ashamed. It was because he wanted the queen to think that his heart had grown cold towards the maid and her child, and so that she would give up trying to get rid of them. The boy knew absolutely nothing about it. He thought that his father was a callous and emotionless person, and also very weak. But it turned out that he tried with all his might to protect him and his mother. Before her death, the mother took off the beautiful pendant that she always wore around her neck and handed it to her son. She said that it was a gift from the emperor, and now she was leaving it to her son. This is the only gift she can leave to her child. The pendant will always remind him of her and her love. Let this stone always be with him now. The woman asked Alexis to never give up and to go for his goal. She knows what her son is capable of and what he deserves. Therefore, she wants him to prove to everyone that he can achieve the status of crown prince. He is also the son of the emperor, and his father loves him as much as the other two sons. Let him just remember that he also has the right to become who he wants to be and live happily. And then Alexis said that his greatest dream was to show these arrogant aristocrats how wrong they were about him. He didn't want to leave Country A in the hands of people like them. He finally realized what he wanted in this life. He wanted to become the king of this empire, and he believed that he had the strength to achieve this goal. A little stranger opened his eyes and convinced him to move on. These are the words Alexis' mother wanted to hear. She warned him that it would not be easy and that her son would have to endure a lot and try hard to achieve his dream. But she is sure that her son can do it. At the last moment before her death, the woman asked her son to promise her something. When he became emperor and put the glittering crown on his head, let him remain himself. The son understood that his mother could not be brought back, but he promised the woman that he would never turn from the right path and would remain the same. His mother raised him. He swears and will not break the oath. The boy took his mother's funeral very hard. He understood that he was left completely alone in this world, and there was no one else to support him. Few people gathered. The emperor never showed up. But then the official queen showed up. She must have come to the funeral to see for herself that her rival had really died. The woman couldn't hide her pleasure. She was angry that Alexis's mother was allowed to live on this earth only because His Majesty had once taken a fancy to her. She was a real thorn in the queen's side. The woman explained her appearance in the northern castle by the fact that Alexis's mother was the official favorite of the emperor. So she, as queen, could not help but attend her funeral. As she left, the queen said that the only thing the child's mother could do right was to die while His Majesty was abroad on business. This evil and vengeful woman was a real witch. She did not hesitate to say such terrible words at the funeral, and right in front of the deceased's own son. But the boy held on with all his might. Liz clutched his mother's pendant in his palm. He had to endure everything. He was strong, and he promised his mother that he would make everyone who had dragged her through the mud feel sorry for her. He really won't allow such creatures to rule his country. He just needs to endure a little longer and reach adulthood. Only then can he officially assume his rights and begin the fight for the status of crown prince. He will become emperor. It was on that day that Alex firmly decided that he would prove to everyone, and first of all to himself and his deceased mother, that he was worth something, so that in the future he would be called the emperor of this country. And now he is slowly but surely moving towards his goal. Many years have passed, but he still keeps his mother's pendant close to his heart. It is a reminder of the woman who gave him life and the incentive to keep the promise he made to her. Sophia listened attentively to the guy's story and could not believe that he had so much strength to endure all the bullying and humiliation. How strong is this man? At first, the boy wanted to wipe the nose of all those who so persistently tried to prove to him that he was a second-class child of the emperor. Therefore, he tirelessly studied various sciences. Alexis succeeded in absolutely everything. After some time, he was appointed commander of the knightly order. Being among strong and brave knights gave him self-confidence. The knights, for their part, deeply respected their commander for his intelligence and honesty. They knew that Alexis would protect them in any situation, so they trusted him unconditionally. The boy won many battles, became a famous commander, which earned him the trust of the common people. He was loved by absolutely everyone, except his father and brother Raymond. These are the factors that made Alexis decide to become the emperor of this country. He loves his people, and if necessary, he will be able to protect them because he knows how to do it. This young man had enough love and attention for everyone. He cared about ordinary people, did not forget his mother, and confidently walked into the future. But at the same time, Alexis was honest with himself and with those around him. It was clear that he now consciously wanted to achieve such a result. It was not only to fulfill the will of his dead mother. Now he was confidently moving towards his goal. Sophia was convinced that the guy would achieve his goal, and she and his friends would definitely support and help him on the way to his dream. He is very strong and can handle everything, even Raymond. The girl asked Alexis to show her his pendant closer. It was beautiful. The boy's mother knew a lot about jewelry. It was a wonderful jade stone of a delightful blue hue. The guy said that the emperor had given this decoration to his mother. He had personally chosen it and hung it on the woman's neck. But that was a long time ago, at the beginning of their relationship, when he loved her. But Sophia realized that the emperor never stopped loving his mother. He just couldn't show his feelings. Being an emperor is hard. You have to live by rules that you don't accept or support. He kept Raymond close to him, but for some reason, he appointed Alexis as the commander of the knightly order. He trusted this guy with the safety of his country, and he was not mistaken in his choice. This means that the emperor had been watching his sons for a long time, testing the waters and checking whether Alexis could be trusted with an important part of the state's work. After all, managing an army is not easy. The emperor then watched from afar as his son won the love of the knights and the respect of the common people. He won wars with ease, was an excellent strategist, and was afraid of nothing. So Sophia told Alexis that she was sure that the emperor had never stopped loving his mother, or him. It was just the way things had worked out. The guy was silent for a while, but then answered that, unfortunately, he never felt fatherly love, but only a neutral attitude. But maybe there is some truth in Sophia's words. Alexis remembered that his father seemed really happy when he appointed him as the leader of the knightly order. And when Alexis made progress, he always praised him. The girl thought that initially, she simply did not want to give Raymond the opportunity to become emperor, so she came to Alexis, the only person who could resist this monster. But now she understands that she made the right choice. She wants to see Alexis on the throne exclusively. He must become the next emperor. And now Alexis promises the second woman that he will definitely become the crown prince, and later the emperor of the country. Now there is simply no way back. But the guy asks Sophia to always be by his side. Without her, he would not succeed, not because he was weak. The girl had long since become his inspiration and support. Sophia, in turn, promised that she would never, under any circumstances, abandon Alexis and would do everything in her power to help him achieve his goal and punish the killers of her family. But from now on, she's not doing this just for revenge on Raymond. She desperately wants the man who takes the throne to be worthy and to love his people. That's what she wants. Several days had passed since their conversation. Raymond's silence was strange. He was probably planning his next course of action, and they would soon hear bad news. Bruno arrived from the neighboring country. The guys realized that they had already missed each other. They needed to think about how they would proceed, because for now, things were at a standstill. All hope was in Bruno's analogical thinking, and the boy did not disappoint. He noticed that at the ball, Raymond was openly fawning over the aristocracy, trying to get attention. But it was clear that this murderer had nothing to offer serious and influential people except flattery. He wanted to make sure that the nobles, who had not yet made up their minds, would take his side. Bruno said that it would be very good if Duke Edelball, for his part, would also slowly influence society and put a spoke in the wheels of stupid Raymond, ruining his reputation. It is clear that this will not be enough, but in the near future, the guys will play their main trump card. And none of the vile opponents even guess what it will be. Bruno believes that in their case, the central role should be taken by the common people, not pompous aristocrats. Therefore, their main support will be the simple and honest people. Until recently, power in the country was inherited according to a certain principle. It was not the best. But now the situation has changed, because the two princes are claiming the highest title. In this case, the dispute is resolved in a completely different way. In the empire, a vote is held in which absolutely all residents of the country participate, and the result is not subject to discussion. And this means that all people must cast their vote for one or another candidate. And it is clear that there are many more common people in the empire than aristocrats. Bruno has already calculated everything and provided his friends with the results. Luckily, if the elections take place, Raymond simply has no chance of winning them. The people will definitely choose Alexis. For the common workers and peasants, Alexis is a symbol of honesty and courage. He has won so many battles and is a fearless hero who has led their empire to countless victories. Indeed, Alexis has won incredible respect from the common people, which cannot be said about the scoundrel Raymond, who is afraid to even show his nose outside without security. Bruno asked his brother if he knew that people called him a fearless hero. But Alexis was so modest that he simply blushed and said that it was the first time he heard such a thing. The third prince suggested not to sit around like stumps in the estate, but to go straight to the people and continue to win their trust. You need to be closer to the common people. And he has a great idea. So an hour later, the guys entered the most popular tavern in the capital. It was full of people. The atmosphere was cheerful and carefree. People were eating after work, chatting and sharing news. At first, Sophia was shocked. She was not used to visiting such places. Everything here was strange and new to her. Aristocrats did not spend time in taverns, especially girls. The owner of the establishment offered the guys a free table, brought wine and snacks. The girl calmed down a bit and suggested thinking about what to do next. But it turned out that the rune had already thought of everything. He pretended to be a stranger and loudly asked Alexis if he was His Majesty the Prince, whom people call the fearless hero. This trick immediately attracted the attention of absolutely all visitors in the establishment. People turned around and looked at the table where Alexis was sitting. Everyone was interested in seeing the prince in person. Bruno, in turn, began to praise the commander of the Order of Knights even louder and say that it was time for him to take the place of the crown prince. It would be right and honest. Next came Sophia. She shouted that it would be right not to allow the coward Raymond the imperial throne. After all, His Highness Alexis deserved it much more. The people would support him. Alexis loudly replied that there was one problem. For the emperor to make him heir to the throne, as many people as possible would need to vote for him. And the aristocrats, unfortunately, would choose Raymond. The tavern owner asked how they could vote to help the prince. He replied that they had to write the name of the future emperor on a piece of paper and throw it into a special box. The principle is very simple and clear. If there are fewer sheets of paper with Alexis's name, he will never become an emperor, and His Majesty Raymond will rule the country. But the people in the tavern shouted that they would never allow such a turn of events. Many of those present fought alongside Alexis on the battlefield, and thanks to him, they remained alive. So now they are indebted. One of the waitresses said that she would ask her entire village and all her relatives to come on election day and vote for Alexis, because her husband serves in a knightly order and respects his commander very much. Bruno's strategy was a sure thing. They started their campaign with a small tavern, but word spread like wildfire that the prince was here. What pleased Sophia most was that they were achieving success in an honest way, without killing anyone, and without humiliating them, as Raymond did. This was their trump card, and people would definitely support them. Bruno said that it was too early to rejoice in success. They had a lot of work ahead of them, and one tavern would not give the desired result. They needed to spread the word further. It seemed that Bruno still had a lot of aces up his sleeve. The guy said that they would need to drop by one more place that evening. And an hour later, they were standing in front of the inn of the knightly order. Sophia and Alexis didn't even ask why they came here. They completely trusted this smart and unpredictable guy, and knew that if he came up with something, it would give a great result. The young men were met by Barry. He was surprised to see his boss and friend here. According to the latest information, Alexis should have had business in the city, so why was he here now and not alone? Seeing the two princes and the young duchess in front of him, the boy froze in a bow. He had never seen the youngest of the princes before. But it turned out that Bruno was a very pleasant and cheerful young man. The third prince seemed to feel confident and comfortable in any situation. He said that he would like to talk to the knights. He had some interesting information. He wants the knights to prove their love and loyalty to their boss, and at the right moment to help him ascend to the throne and receive the title of crown prince, because he cannot do it alone. Bruno said that each of the knights had relatives and friends among the aristocracy. They should influence them and convince them, if necessary, to support Prince Alexis, and not Raymond. The knights loved and respected their leader very much, and this was great news for them. They were all for seeing their commander on the imperial throne. His Highness Alexis was a true friend to them. There was never a case when the prince let them down, or let them down during a fight. Therefore, they will do everything to repay him with faith and truth. Someone suggested that people in the provinces don't know how things are in the capital and don't see any difference between Alexis and Raymond, so they need to get the information out there. It was true. It was necessary to explain to the common people who live far away in the provinces that only Alex is capable of improving their living conditions and taking care of their future. And those knights who do not have relatives in noble families just need to convince their relatives and tell the whole truth about Prince Raymond and his vile methods of fighting for the emperor's throne. After talking with the knights, the boys were absolutely sure that they would receive maximum support from the knights and from their relatives too. So they definitely decided to come here for a reason. Bruno was very pleased with the work done. Now they have reliable support from the knights, they have the support of some aristocrats, and they hope that the people will be for Alexis. The third prince turned out to be an amazing person. What luck that they decided to go to his house one day and ask for support. They were very lucky that he was on their side. Bruno is a very strong opponent, and it is better not to stand in his way. He used to always be in the shadows, but that did not make him any less confident in his powers. And he had his own scores to settle with Raymond. He never interfered in anything, just like the first prince wanted. But then something happened, and now he wants to destroy Raymond, just as much as Sophia does. So they can rest assured that he will help them. But even the young Duchess did not know what Raymond's next move would be. His meanness knows no bounds, so one must always be on one's guard. No one knows what other trump cards he has. Sophia had long been tormented by one question. Raymond's mother is from an influential aristocratic family and behaves very defiantly. But for some reason, her relatives do not particularly support her son's candidacy. Bruno was also surprised, because it was strange. When you look for allies, the choice usually falls on people you can definitely trust. But perhaps the trust in this family is not so strong. And Alexis said that this is why he chooses only reliable and honest people as allies, who will not betray at the first opportunity. He trusts Bruno and Sophia. Indeed, they took Duke Boldega as their ally. But no one in the country could say anything good about this man. He was a slippery type and cared only about himself. Should the situation change, the Duke would easily side with Alexis to save himself, his reputation, and his money. He would leave Raymond alone with his problems. Raymond's mother, too. The Queen came from a noble ducal family, but her brother shares quite moderate views. He does not have great ambitions. He is very passive. Even when his own sister became queen, he did not want to enter the game of power and authority. He continued to lead a quiet life, not showing himself in public for a long time. Thus, Duke Raymond turned out to be a rather disinterested person, and also far from the most influential member of their family. And Raymond probably does not consider it necessary to use Raymond as an ally. Alexis also thought that the situation with the Queen's brother was not so simple. Something was wrong there. That's why the prince assigned his knights to the Duke. If Raymond tried to contact him, they would immediately know about it. Late in the evening, the girl returned to her estate, and she was pleasantly surprised that her maid and the little boy they had rescued from Raymond's hands were waiting for her. The boy smiled for the first time. The boy was still a little shy, because he was not used to such conditions, and besides, he was all alone. His parents were dead. Ani, as best she could, tried to cheer Leo up and ease his pain. Sophia told the child that from now on he would live in her house. Her maid would take care of him as if he were her own son, and the Duchess also made arrangements with teachers, and the boy would receive an education. In some ways, Sophia felt guilty for his mother's death, so she promised that she would give her son absolutely everything so that he would not feel like an unhappy orphan. The girl also wanted to raise the boy to be a real man, so she decided that sword fighting lessons would be beneficial to him and would be very useful in his adult life. The boy was truly delighted by this news. He could only dream of this before. And now he and the Duchess will take self-defense lessons from the best knight, Amy. She couldn't protect his mother at the right moment, so she knows how important it is to be able to stand up for yourself and your loved ones. And Leo is also a man, and in the future she plans to take official guardianship over him. Life was in full swing in the imperial palace. Raymond seemed to be up to something. He gathered the aristocrats for a dinner party, and everyone pretended to flatter him that he would be the next crown prince. The fact that Duke Raymond had once again failed to show up for his beloved nephew's reception was noticed not only by Raymond, but by everyone present in the palace. He did not pay his respects to him. Of course, the cowardly prince tried not to show that he was furious at being ignored by his uncle, but when he was left alone, he almost exploded with anger. Raymond remembered how 11 years ago, when he and Alexis were studying together, the Queen Mother always scolded him for the fact that his commoner brother studied much better. Such news always made the Queen furious, and she was very angry with Raymond, scolding him. And he, in turn, came up with various excuses and tried to present his brother in the worst light. Very often the mother would get so angry that she would beat her son and call him a pathetic coward who was incapable of anything. He has royal blood in him, so why is he such a weakling? The woman couldn't understand how her son could lose to a half-breed like Alexis. After all, his mother was a simple servant. Why did Raymond never stop shaming her in front of her family? When the queen didn't like something, she was her son. But she said that she was doing it for her son, because he was not making any effort and was losing to Alexis. Sometimes Raymond secretly spied on how Alexis and his mother behaved. It was obvious that the woman loved her son madly. She constantly praised and encouraged him, and she hugged him so tightly and sincerely. It was obvious that his competitor felt warm and cozy in his mother's arms. He felt absolutely protected there, even without a noble pedigree. What Raymond saw simply blew his mind. Why could this vile boy without a family or tribe feel so happy? And he, the real son of the emperor, was always unhappy. The queen never looked at her son with the love with which the simple servant looked at her child, whom everyone despised and did not consider the crown prince. He probably needs to try harder in his studies and self-development, and then his mother will definitely notice it and praise Raymond. He doesn't even dream that the queen will be able to hug him. That won't happen. Raymond knew perfectly well that the suit Alexis wore to the queen's birthday party had been sewn for him by his mother herself. The second prince looked splendid, and he decided to ruin his brother's outfit. The stupid and mean prince took it out on Alexis in this way. He enjoyed humiliating and insulting his brother. He did not play fair, because he always lost. He threw mud all over Alexis and laughed in the boy's face. Let him not be such a handsome man. The suit was ruined. Let him go back to his foggy castle with his mother. Raymond then said that Alexis's destiny was to serve him, the first and rightful prince. Therefore, he must crawl before him on his knees and be afraid to raise his head. His lowly origins do not allow him to rise from his knees and claim not only the title of crown prince, but even the love of the emperor. He is the complete opposite of Raymond. Pleased with himself, Raymond returned to the palace. He told his mother that he had gotten even with Alexis, but the woman did not even listen. She scolded her son for being absent from the ball for so long. The woman was furious because Raymond was supposed to meet the daughter of Duke Edelball at the ball. They had to get this girl as a future bride. The ducal family is very influential in the country. Even people of royal blood listen to the duke's opinions. Therefore, they should get to know these people better. Without ceremony, the queen informed her son that he must do everything to win the heart of a young but influential girl and marry her in the future. Then the title of crown prince would be assured to him. He needs to make an effort right now and get this girl's attention. Otherwise, Alexis will beat him to it here too. That's why she doesn't want to listen to excuses and asks her son to act. Otherwise, he will regret it. When the girl came out of the imperial garden, she was immediately led into the hall and introduced to His Majesty Raymond. The boy immediately realized that this girl would be able to help him achieve his goal. Sophia bowed to the prince and said that she was very pleased to meet Raymond. She exuded strength and confidence. Raymond noticed it at once, because he himself was a weakling. And then the girl said something that Raymond was not ready to hear. Sophia said that the boy was not at all like his brother. She met the second prince in the garden, and he was very handsome. The queen could barely control herself. And here, this low-born Alexis had beaten her son to it. How did he manage to meet the girl? This was not in her plans. Everything was getting out of control. Sophia said that the second prince kindly helped her out of the garden, where she got lost. Alexis seemed very kind and well-mannered, but a little sad. They had a good conversation. Raymond understood that he had already angered his mother without even doing anything, and she would take it out on him later. His brother had beaten him to it and had met the young duchess first. Sophia's father was a wise man and understood why they had been called to the palace. But he did not like the situation, so he took his daughter, said goodbye to the queen and her son, and went home. It seems that the queen was in a good mood only on the day of the death and burial of her rival, Alexis's mother. Finally, the emperor's illegitimate son will be truly vulnerable. The woman she had feared but had not admitted it, the one who had been a constant thorn in her side, was finally dead. It meant better days would come, and she and Raymond would be able to defeat that vile boy. Now the Emperor's love and attention will be reserved for the Queen alone. He will not call the name of this lowly servant in his sleep at night. She has finally won. The Queen knew perfectly well that her marriage to the Emperor was a pure benefit for their families. In fact, the sovereign always loved this vile servant, and he loved her son as well. He just tried not to show it. The marriage with the princess of the kingdom of Lyriquel was needed exclusively for diplomatic purposes. There was no hint of any love here, and he treated the son from this marriage absolutely neutrally. And the boy never showed up in the palace. The current queen did exist, but there were rumors that their family was not interested in increasing their influence in the country, and all they had from the principality was a title. They did not possess any special power. Weak leaders had lost the queen's family's former power. Therefore, the woman very rarely turned to her relatives for help and never asked for support for her son. Even the servants in the palace whispered that the queen was elected only because it was advantageous to the emperor at the time. He does not like her at all. That is why she is furious. The woman took out all her anger and hatred on her son Raymond, who seemed pitiful and helpless to her, and on the servants. But this did not make things any easier for her. Sometimes it got to the point where she got so mad that she beat her maids and then threw them out. She couldn't make any claims to the emperor. He simply didn't listen to her. She simply could not stand the fact that even the servants in the corners were discussing her life with the emperor, and any maid could confirm that the sovereign did not feel a drop of love for this woman. Raymond was still very young and did not understand many things. For example, that Alexis's mother had died, and for some reason everyone, even the servants in the palace, felt sorry not for her, but for the queen. Therefore, the woman's goal was to prove to absolutely everyone that only she and her son were the legitimate heirs to the throne, and Raymond must receive the title of crown prince at any cost. By any means necessary, and even with any dire consequences, she will make sure that only her son can take the throne. She will help Raymond destroy Alexis, and if her son doesn't do what she asks, then he's a real weakling, and she gave birth to him in vain. He must become the only heir to the throne no matter what. From then on, the queen began to prepare Raymond for the title of crown prince. She controlled his every step and punished him severely for every misdeed. But this did not make her son stronger, rather the opposite. But despite all her efforts, the woman fell ill with an incurable disease and died. Only Raymond felt sorry for her passing, but he did so for only a short time. Until her last day, the queen continued to tell her son that he must become the crown prince at any cost. But she never once told her child that she loved him. Until her death, this woman saw Raymond only as a tool with which she could fulfill her personal desires and achieve the love of the emperor. And Raymond had only one path left, to become the crown prince. He did not know any other way and did not understand how to live in harmony with himself and the outside world. The prince learned only one lesson from his mother. Those who would not obey him, he would make do so by force. That was what the queen always did. He would achieve victory on his own and destroy Alexis. He would have enough meanness and cunning to do this. Ani, as always, came in the morning with fresh news. This time they were not bad, but there was still too little good. The country was preparing for the elections of the crown prince. The girl also volunteered to help Prince Alexis. She has many acquaintances, and Anai will ask them all to come to the elections and vote for the most honest and courageous candidate, Prince Alexis. In the Empire, most of the common people couldn't read properly, so Annie had to convey the necessary information to the people correctly. And she knew how to do that. Spreading rumors is quite easy. The young people also decided to have a reception. For this, Sophia put on her most beautiful dress. The girl was irresistible, so no one could take their eyes off the young duchess. Alexis was also irresistible. Blue suited him very well. His suit suited him perfectly. The guy looked majestic, and a modest smile sometimes flashed on his handsome face. The guy wasn't used to dressing so pompously. His clothes were always modest and simple. But Sophia reminded him that he wasn't on the battlefield, but at a reception for important and influential guests, so clothes were important. The public reaction to the prince and duchess's appearance in high society immediately shocked those present. They were so perfect for each other, and only a blind man could not fail to notice the sparks of love between them. Sophia greeted the high-ranking guests, smiling at each of them. She was truly very happy that so many influential people responded to her and Alexis's invitation. The guests were also very pleased that the young couple invited them to such an important reception. Everyone had fun, drank delicious wine, had fun, and talked about the upcoming elections and voting. One of the dukes suggested that His Majesty Prince Alexis would have a hard time in this race for the throne. They, as an aristocracy, prefer to follow the principle of blood inheritance. Alexis didn't quite understand why they were treating him like that. He also had the emperor's blood in his veins. It's just that his mother was from an ordinary family. Why did everyone deny this fact? One of the nobles reminded him that his mother was a servant, but then Sophia decided to end this conversation. She approached the man and in a calm tone simply asked him to leave her house. The pompous nobleman said that it was very rude of her, but the girl repeated her request once more and said that if he had become deaf from old age, she could repeat it louder once more. So that absolutely all the guests in the hall could hear, Sophia decided to dot all the I's and cross all the T's in this situation. She simply said that people who support Alexis had gathered here, and they did not want to see Raymond's spies. Duke Edelball stepped in and reminded the vile spy that it was the Edelball family that had raised him to such status. And besides, he had yet to pay him back all the money he had borrowed. The man did not expect such a disgrace. He did not know what to say, how to react to the Duke's words. He really was mired in debt, and Edelball patiently forgives him for this and waits for his money. The first spy had been exposed, and that was only the beginning. There was no point in wasting any more time on such pathetic and corrupt people as this nobleman. They had to move on. Sophia suggested not to forget that they had a house full of guests, and it would be rude to leave them without the host's attention. So she returned to the hall and asked those present to forgive her for the incident. The guests realized that it was better not to play such jokes with the powerful Edelball family. The Duke had helped so many of them to rise from poverty and gain the status of aristocrats. Suddenly, the girl heard a painfully familiar voice. Someone greeted the guests and said that it was a lot of fun here. Sophia turned around and froze. In the middle of the hall stood her former friend Samantha. Then the traitor approached the Duchess and said hello. She said that they had not seen each other for a long time, since Samantha had married His Highness Prince Raymond. This vile woman also said in front of the guests that she once came to visit the Duchess, but she asked her servants to throw her out the door. But friends don't do that. Why did Sophia do that? The girl didn't even twitch an eyebrow. She answered in a calm voice that not everyone could come to the Duke's house. Samantha had to warn about her visit. Sophia reminded the girl that they had not been friends for a long time, so there was no need to come to visit her to find out useful information for her lover Raymond. But Samantha decided to play out a real tragedy in front of the guests. She started pretending to cry and lamenting how Sophia could be so cruel to her friend. She truly loves her. The Duchess smiled. How can they be friends if she is Alexis's fiancé and Samantha is the vile Raymond? Both princes are fighting for the throne. How can they be friends? They are also enemies. Samantha seemed to be about to burst from anger and shame. She had not expected such behavior from Sophia because she was used to the girl always being quiet and always agreeing with her friend's opinion. The Duchess called after her that Samantha needed to watch her behavior more. No one had invited her to the party, and she just showed up. It was simply not nice to act like that. There was no doubt that it was Raymond who had sent this deceitful and tactless girl here. Now he sat in his castle like a cowardly criminal and waited for news from his mistress. Afterwards, Sophia told the guests that she had long suspected that Raymond and Samantha were secretly dating behind her back. That's why she dumped the traitor and agreed to marry Alexis. He wouldn't betray her. The girl then asked the guests not to pay attention to such unpleasant nuances. She thought to herself that she had managed to deal with two vile traitors in one evening. Samantha was simply burning with anger. How long could this go on? Damn, Sophia was one step ahead again and gathered influential people. But now, Samantha was no lower in status than her. Samantha was originally a princess. After the birth of her older brother, her parents had no children for a long time. But then she was born, the long-awaited girl with beautiful hair. The parents were crazy about the girl who was born so late. Her brothers also adored her, and she lived in the Count's family, not knowing what poverty, suffering, and betrayal were. Her parents were no longer young, so they spoiled their girl and did not deny her anything. In addition, she was a very sweet child, with a beautiful face and long, fluffy hair. Her mother taught her good manners, and her father and older brother made sure that the family did not know need either now or in the future. Everything was fine until a certain time. One day, her mother called her and said that today they would have a meeting with very influential people. Therefore, the girl should behave very well and not make her relatives blush. A little girl came to visit with the adults. She was also incredibly beautiful, but unlike Samantha, she was very quiet and modest. This was her first meeting with Sophia. Samantha's mother, seeing the guests, immediately froze in a bow, and the girl remained standing straight. But the mother made the girl also bow, saying that the guests were much higher in status. They were dukes. It turns out that the Duchess had health problems, and she and her daughter came to these places to recover a little. They stayed at the estate of the Count, who kindly received them. Since Sophia's mother needed some rest after the trip, the owners suggested that her daughter play with their daughter Samantha. They are almost the same age, so they will quickly find a common language. Then Samantha felt like a living toy. No one asked her if she wanted to play with a strange girl, and the daughter of Duke Edelbol at that. What could she talk about with an aristocrat of that level? But the girl turned out to be quite friendly. She immediately smiled and asked Samantha to address her as you, and let the adults think about titles and social status. The girls started talking. It turned out that they were both 7 years old and had many common interests. Samantha offered to show her guest her house, and she, in turn, said that they would become friends. But the friendship turned out to be strange. Now Samantha was expected to be like little Duchess Sophia. She was constantly being reprimanded and asked to be more polite to the girl. This was a real punishment for the Count's daughter. She was used to living in love and harmony with herself and her family. But her family changed dramatically after the arrival of the Duchess and her daughter. The family used to dote on her, but now everything had changed. If the little Duchess didn't like something, they always scolded Samantha. And the girl now blamed Sophia for all her troubles. It's all because of her and her mother. Her own family stopped loving her because Sophia was smarter, had a better upbringing, behaved more modestly and quietly than Samantha. Years passed. The girls grew up, but they did not stop communicating, all because Samantha had no more friends. She did not communicate with anyone except the Duchess, and she did not mind spending time with her. When they appeared at social events, people around them would whisper and continue to compare the girls. They would shower Sophia with the best compliments, and Samantha would be called clingy. And the girl did not understand at all why high society treated her this way. After all, she was no worse than Sophia. They just became friends, and she did not consider it necessary to make other friends. She just wasn't as lucky as Sophia. After all, Samantha is an ordinary girl. Yes, she is the daughter of a rich count, but her friend is the heiress of a ducal family, and that is much higher than Samantha's title. All Samantha wanted was to take revenge for all the humiliation she suffered as Sophia's friend. The time would come when she would also achieve such a high position in society. Arriving at the imperial palace, Samantha shouted at Raymond and demanded that the prince quickly deal with this impudent duchess. She could not tolerate her any longer. The girl told how she appeared at a dinner party given in honor of Prince Alexis, and how Duchess Sophia humiliated her in front of everyone and threw her out of the estate, telling her not to appear in her way again. But everything had to be done very carefully. Aristocrats must protect their reputation. If rumors spread that they had met behind the Duchess's back, they would lose the trust of influential families. Influential families close to the emperor do not forgive lies and betrayal. Therefore, having learned the whole truth, they may go over to the side of Prince Alexis and help him become the crown prince. There are no young girls in the royal family, and among the ducal families, the only girl is Sophia. She is the same age as the other heirs and belongs to a noble family, so they should start acting more radically. Otherwise, if Raymond does not ascend the throne, Samantha will never be able to surpass that upstart Duchess Sophia. Raymond was also furious. Because of this arrogant Sophia, everything is going wrong. When did she become so strong and self-confident? Or does Alexis give her this confidence? The prince tried to calm the girl down and said that the main battle was still ahead of them. There was no need to despair. If she was slapped, then she should respond with a fist. They would do so, only a little later. The party was over, and Sophia was very glad about it. She needed to rest, because Samantha had gotten on her nerves enough. But now everyone knew who their real enemy was. Having learned about Raymond and Samantha's affair, the aristocrats who were torn between the two sides will get rid of all doubts and go over to their and Alexis's side. After all, honesty is valued everywhere, but it wasn't possible to sit in peace for long. Amy ran into the room. The girl was slightly irritated and scared, and it was too late for self-defense. Something must have happened. Sophia was not mistaken. Something terrible happened. Amy heard the gossip that Raymond and Samantha were spreading. They gossiped that Sophia refused Raymond's engagement because she was already secretly dating Alexis at that time. But how can that be? They put the girl in a very bad light, as if she was cheating on her official fiancé and was secretly the lover of the second prince Alexis. Even Amy was shocked. She knew exactly what this could mean for Alexis. He would lose his reputation and his only chance to become crown prince, and Sophia would be disgraced. The girl said that rumors had already reached even the Order of Knights, and all the women in the markets were whispering about it. If nothing was done, both Sophia and Alexis could suffer greatly. But how could this happen? Of course, it was that snake Samantha. It couldn't have happened without her. She wants to take revenge in any way for her disgrace at the dinner party yesterday. Sophia shouted to her maid to immediately inform Monsieur Alexis and Prince Bruno of what had happened. It was necessary to act quickly so that rumors would not spread throughout the empire. Amy said she overheard two women discussing the subject at the market. Madame Sophia and Prince Raymond were engaged, but at the same time, she was secretly dating Prince Alexis. The rumor was based on the true story of Samantha and Raymond, who secretly met and became lovers while Sophia was preparing to marry Raymond. Although the emperor had publicly given his permission for her union with Alexis and blessed them, who would now believe that Sophia had not been in a secret relationship with him while she was waiting for her engagement to Raymond? The girl was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't even notice the two princes and her maid entering the room. The boys were also already aware of the rumors that had spread, so they came running like a bullet. This time, Sophia screwed up big time. It's her fault. She didn't think twice and said some stupid things to Samantha in front of strangers. This touched the traitor to the depths of her soul, and she takes revenge. Now she deeply regrets her actions. But she told the pure truth. Raymond really was Samantha's lover, being Sophia's fiancé, but she can't prove it. There is no evidence. Alexis tried to calm her down somehow. Yes, there was no direct evidence, but there was no need to despair and give up right away. They would think together how to put everything back in its place. Bruno was the one who wasn't worried at all. He, as always, smiled and said that not everything was as bad as it seemed. It turns out that Alexis had been keeping an eye on Samantha and Raymond's relationship all this time. Yes, it turns out that Alexis, when he heard the story about Raymond and Samantha, began secretly following them. He didn't tell anyone about it, but he thought it might come in handy. The prince's trusted people intercepted the correspondence between Raymond and Samantha, where they confessed their feelings to each other, where they threw dirt at Alexis and Sophia, calling them stupid and naive. Bruno smiled again and said that there was no need to worry so much. Now they had official evidence, thanks to the second prince. Now they had to go get it immediately. They took a carriage and went to the city center. After some time, the carriage stopped near a large hotel. It was an ideal place for secret meetings. There was no fear of being caught. The status of such a hotel hires the appropriate staff, who constantly keep their mouths shut. Therefore, You can be sure that the information will not go beyond these walls. Alexis said that the two traitors had long used the hotel as a secret love nest. They probably knew that the staff would not spread rumors. All this is well and good. But how does Alexis know about these secret meetings if no one saw it, or saw it, but will not tell? But Bruno winked. The imperial family has informants everywhere. No matter how strict the rules were for keeping confidential information, if the royal house needed it, it would leak through any barrier. So it was easy to find out a little more than was possible. The right person was already waiting for them at the hotel and led them to a distant room where they could discuss everything without prying eyes and ears. Bruno introduced his friends and said that they could be trusted. Sophia noticed that Bruno had his own people at every step. When the hotel worker greeted them in the room, there was already coffee on the table. It turned out that they were already expected. The young man asked for a hot coffee and to wait for him for a few minutes. Then he returned with some magazine. It was a list of guests who often rented rooms for the night, but the guy said that visitors can register under someone else's name. After all, often in hotels, vile people do dirty deeds, make illegal purchases, etc. But Bruno objected. He said that the emperor had amended the law, and now hotel guests are required to enter only their official data into the register for security and compliance with the law. Bruno began to study the lists carefully, and after a few minutes, he saw Samantha's first and last name. It turns out she entered her details so as not to involve Raymond in this secret matter. Of course, the emperor's son can't spend the night in hotels. It would compromise his father, so Samantha took on this part of the job. There was no doubt that she was meeting Raymond there. Why should two adults who have their own homes meet at night in a hotel? It's obvious, for love meetings, that no one should know about. Having borrowed documents with Samantha's name and signature for a while, the young people left the hotel. There was no point in hanging around here. What if Raymond and his mistress came? They couldn't meet here. Finally, they have the evidence in their hands, and now it will be easier for them to fight these traitors. They will open the eyes of the people and expose these vile deceivers. Sophia still felt guilty about the situation, but the guys calmed her down. People would definitely choose their side when they learned the truth about Raymond's affair with Samantha. Finally, the Duchess managed to get home. She was very tired. The whole situation had exhausted her, so the girl did not lose hope to just rest and be alone with her thoughts. Everything was as usual in the estate. The servants were busy with their business. But there was one oddity. Leo did not meet her. The boy ran out onto the porch every time he heard the sound of an approaching carriage. None of the maids had seen him since the morning. Ani thought he was playing in his room, but the child was not there. Everything in Sophia's soul turned upside down, and fear settled there. The maid ran around the house and looked in every corner, but the boy was nowhere to be found. Only the guard at the gate said that a child had gone outside the estate, but he thought it was one of the servants' children. According to the guard's description, it was definitely Leo. Raymond is probably looking for the boy. After all, the child is a nuisance and a very valuable witness in his brutal crimes. If this is Raymond's doing, then every minute of the child's life could be his last. He will try to make sure that the boy simply disappears and no one ever knows about him again. She won't let these cruel killers take this innocent boy. He's just a child, and her job is to find him and protect him from people like Raymond and Samantha. These vile traitors know how to make the victim come to them at will. But Leo was in Sophia's estate all the time, so how could they lure him out? The gatekeeper said the child left on his own. The girl asked the maid why the guard at the gate let Leo through. After all, the entire estate staff knows that the ducal family protects this boy, and he is under constant supervision. But the maid told me that their old gatekeeper had quit a week ago, and a new man had been sent in his place. He probably didn't know that Leo wasn't allowed to leave the estate alone. This was also Sophia's fault. The servants in the house were informed about Leo, but everyone else was not aware. And Raymond took advantage of this. He sent his spy to work for the Duke. While the girl was thinking, Ani ran to the gate and brought a new guard who had been on duty that morning. He turned out to be a young guy. He was very scared and nervous. The gatekeeper said that the boy came up to him in the morning and asked him to draw him the road to the theater. The boy did not know that it was forbidden to let a child in alone. At first, the boy was surprised by the boy's request, because as far as he knew, the theater did not give performances at this time of year. But Leo said that he was not going to attend the performance. He just needed to get to the theater. Annie ran up to them. The girl was holding a letter in her hands. She looked through Leo's room again and found an envelope with this message inside. The girl was crying, so there was bad news. Sophia opened the envelope and began to read. The letter said that Leo's mother was alive, and he could meet her near the theater building, but he had to come there alone, otherwise nothing would work. But how did the boy get this letter? The mail that arrives at the Duke's estate is carefully checked, because it may contain important documents, papers for Sophia's father. One of the maids raised her hand. She had received mail yesterday morning. She had given the important letters to the Duke's office, and one had Leo's name on it. The girl thought it was a friend, so the maid, not suspecting anything bad, took the envelope to the boy. She thought that she would make the little boy happy by the fact that his friends remembered him and were interested in how he was doing. Sophia was overcome with real rage. Why did problems arise out of nowhere? They were hiding this child from the whole world, trying to protect him, but it turned out that he left the estate unhindered. And the girl also noticed her next shortcoming. It is necessary to select servants more carefully and then give detailed instructions to each of them. Then, many problems can be avoided. Before Sophia could shout to the maid to contact Alexis, she heard the familiar voice of her fiancé behind her. Bruno was standing next to him. Annie had gotten ahead of her order. The boys were frightened by the news from the Duke's estate, so they decided not to waste time and arrived immediately. In the next few minutes, they were already talking to the gatekeeper, who let the boy out. Sophia handed Alexis a letter, in which the boy was told that his mother was waiting to meet him at the theater building. There can be no doubt, this message for Leo was sent by the scoundrel Raymond. Bruno suggested not to wait and go to the imperial palace to the first prince. The girl was all for it. We need to find this child before Raymond does anything bad. Little Leo got to the theater without any trouble. He found it easily because the guard drew him a map. Although the building was large, there was no one there, especially his mother. The boy came closer. Then he thought that perhaps he had misunderstood the message in the letter. His mother must be waiting for him inside the theater. So Leo pushed the door resolutely and went inside. It was dark inside, and the boy did not immediately understand who was standing in front of him, but the silhouette was unfamiliar. It was definitely not his mother. But maybe this woman would take him to the right place. The stranger said hello and introduced herself as a friend of Leo's mother, and then said that his mother was a little ill. So she asked Samantha to meet her son and take him to her. The boy asked for forgiveness, but refused to go with the woman. His mother did not have friends from aristocratic society. She only made friends with common people. Besides, he knows all of his mother's friends. The woman became nervous, then laughed and called the boy a naive fool. And then a man appeared behind her, whom Leo remembered very well. He killed his father. Raymond smiled sarcastically. It was in vain that this little boy reminded him of this out loud. He could have saved his life, but he talks a lot and knows a lot of things that should be forgotten. Apparently, because of his good memory, he will die. The boy realized that this time he would not get out of here alive, and he regretted very much that he had not asked Mrs. Sophia to take him to the theater. And it would have been even better not to read that letter at all. Leo closed his eyes and prepared for death. But suddenly, he heard the ringing of swords. Leo decided to see what was happening and simply froze in happiness. Mr. Alexis was fighting Raymond, and Leo knew exactly who would win. And then the boy heard the familiar voice of Mrs. Sophia. He didn't exactly see where she was, and just ran towards the sound. And a few seconds later, he found himself in the warm and reliable arms of the Duchess. Leo knew for sure that if Prince Alexis was here, he wouldn't let anyone hurt him or Madame Sophia. He wielded a sword better than anyone in the world, and Raymond couldn't compare to him. Sophia examined the boy to see if he was okay, and if the crazy prince had hurt him. Then she asked why Leo had acted so recklessly. Had he really not suspected anything? The boy burst into tears. Of course, the letter seemed suspicious to him, and there was no signature. But the desire to see his mother, even for a minute, was greater than common sense. Sophia herself almost cried. How could she tell this sweet little angel the truth about his mother? It would break her heart. She wouldn't do that for now. She had to wait a while for everything to settle down. But then the boy looked at the girl and said that there was no need to keep silent about the truth. He had long ago guessed that this terrible man had killed not only his father, but also his beloved mother. The Duchess cried with the child. She asked for forgiveness for hiding the bitter truth from him, but she said that his mother thought about Leo until the last minute of her life and asked Sophia to take care of him. Sophia didn't see Samantha approach them. She was watching her and the child, but then she decided to give herself away. She clapped her hands and said that she was not impressed by the tragedy of the children's theater. Raymond came up to Samantha. They both started laughing at each other's misfortune. It seemed they weren't even hiding their horrible crimes anymore. And it looked simply disgusting. Raymond said there was no point in hiding, since the Duchess was already aware of all their tricks. But Alexis asked the killers to stop and stop this vile talk in front of the child. Raymond laughed, but the second prince was not amused. He was tired of being silent and living all the mockery inside himself. So now he would show this vile criminal where his place was. Raymond was furious. He knew he couldn't beat his brother in a sword fight. No one had ever been able to defeat the head of the Knights' Order. He had played with Alexis all his life, like a toy, and now he would come up with something too. He will not allow the offspring of some concubine to even think about taking the throne of the emperor. It is Raymond who has the right blood, and he will rightfully take this place. The next minute, Raymond fell from a crushing blow from Alexis. The second prince did not forgive anyone for insulting his late mother, especially such a rotten man as the first prince. He will be able to protect his mother's good name. She really was the most honest woman in the world and raised her son the same way. And Raymond doesn't even have the right to pronounce her name. But the next moment, Alexis tried to calm down. He couldn't kill the scoundrel now. His guilt hadn't been proven yet. So everyone would think that the knight's leader had killed an innocent prince. Yes, he can't kill his brother. But that's for now. But no one forbade him from wounding the killer, so Alexis ran his sword across the traitor's cheek. Raymond didn't expect that, so he almost died of fear. Samantha was also afraid for her lover's life. She ran to him and made sure that the wound was not dangerous. But Alexis warned that here only Raymond bears the name of the killer. Raymond had lost again. He had no business here anymore, because all his threats towards Alexis seemed childish and were not taken seriously. He felt himself becoming pathetic and losing control. He was leaving, despite all the cries of Samantha that the situation cannot be left like this, and Alexis needs to be taught a lesson. He can't do it. He is weak and pathetic, and all that is left for him is to just leave. Fortunately, this time everything ended well. But all this is only thanks to Alexis and Bruno. Without them, not only Leo, but Sophia herself would not have survived. The boy was so exhausted that he fell asleep right in the carriage on the way home. He constantly asked for forgiveness for leaving home without asking, but the girl understood that love for his mother was more important to him. His mother is gone, and the boy knows it. So Sophia must replace Emma for him and do everything possible to ensure that Leo does not feel deprived of love and out of place in her estate. For every person at any age, the love of parents is important, especially for small children. She remembered her past life. When her mother, father, and brother were killed before her eyes, she almost went crazy. The girl promised herself that this boy would live a happy life, and she would take care of it. She would protect him from all troubles, because the child had already seen enough evil and betrayal. The next morning, Bruno showed up at the Duke's house again. He was in a good mood and said that Sophia and Alexis's relationship was not progressing. They urgently needed to go on a date. Sophia found the prince's words strange. It was a tense time, and no time for dates. Not that she didn't want it, she really did. But she had to expect an attack from Raymond, not think about dates. But Bruno had a completely different opinion. For one day, which he and Alexis would devote to each other, nothing terrible would happen. And after that, they would begin the fight for the throne with renewed vigor. The third prince reminded them that although their marriage was considered fictitious, it was worth being alone with each other. He was sure that the young people had something to talk about, and he would be with Leo. Maybe there was some logic in Bruno's words. After all, when they defeat Raymond, they will have to become official husband and wife. So they need to spend more time together. Right now, they have a strictly business relationship, but it can't go on like this. There won't be a better opportunity to talk to each other in the near future, so they should take advantage of the chance. Bruno also reminded them that they should marry for love, not for convenience and mutual assistance. People notice everything, and if they behave in public like business partners, no one will believe in their feelings. The third prince was absolutely right about their marriage. It must not be forgotten that building a proper relationship is much more important than simply entering into a marriage of convenience for the sake of achieving a common goal. But what does Alexis himself think about this? Did Bruno talk to him? They experienced many moments, but it is impossible to say that the young people talked a lot about their feelings. Sophia had gone on dates with Raymond many times, but she had never been as worried or prepared as she was now. This meant that she simply did not have real feelings for the first prince. The girl has long noticed that the second prince has not left her mind for a long time. She constantly thinks about him, remembers all the meetings and moments they experienced together. And this means something. She can't remember the last time she chose her dress and accessories for a date so carefully. Her look shouldn't be too pompous, but she didn't want to look too simple either. Of course, you will have to ask for help from your beloved and faithful maid. And she, as always, will not let you down. Will do everything at the highest level, and the girl will look no worse than the princess herself on the date. The preparations lasted about an hour. Ani was in her element. It was a matter of honor for her to do everything to make her mistress look perfect. It was obvious that Sophia was worried. Exactly at the appointed time, the front door opened and Prince Alexis appeared on the threshold. To say that he was irresistible is to say nothing. The Duchess was momentarily speechless. The prince greeted her, complimented Sophia, and invited her to follow him to the carriage. Were they going somewhere? The girl thought that the date would take place, at most, in the Duke's garden among the blooming roses. Thoughts were confused about both, so there was an uncomfortable silence in the carriage. No one knew where to start the conversation. The girl was shy and afraid of seeming stupid or naive. The prince was also silent, afraid to say something unnecessary. A little later, the carriage stopped in the city center in front of the opera house. Sophia expected that they would be among people, and she would be able to calm down a little. But it turned out that they would have a separate box. The young people were seated, but the performance had not yet begun. Alexis asked the girl if she often visited such places, and if she liked theatrical performances. She replied that she had visited this place at every opportunity before. After her revival, she never visited this place. She simply had neither the time nor the opportunity. All her strength and energy were aimed at fighting and taking revenge on Raymond for her family. For some reason, the conversation turned to Raymond again. Alexis asked when Sophia realized that he had betrayed her. She answered that she had been naive almost until the engagement and believed that her fiancé and her friend were ordinary friends. She lived in rose-colored glasses. But if she had been more attentive, it would not have been difficult to see such obvious betrayal. The girl simply grew up in a normal family and was used to trusting people.